The manhwa begins at a towering demon castle, cloaked in gloom and menace. A man's laughter echoes through the dark hall. He says that he can't believe such a lowly creature dared to come all this way with such a filthy body, though he admits that he admires the audacity and skill. A heavy wave of killing intent bursts out from him, suffocating the air. This man is revealed to be the Demon King, the seventh ranked among his kind, known by the name Parza. The one standing before him, enduring that murderous pressure, is the Archduke of Steel. The Archduke, Han Jae-woo, smiles coolly and tells Parza to shut his mouth, because his era ends today. Then he charges. He draws his blade, invoking the Empire Sword's 12th form, Slayer. With a sharp, overhead strike, he yells at the Demon King to take this final blow. But just before impact, a status window suddenly flashes in front of his face, halting everything. The notification says that the connection to the server has been lost. Parza breaks into laughter, mocking that Jae-woo is full of flaws. Jae-woo, frustrated and confused, tells him to wait and stop. Embarrassment washes over him. He realizes he's just failed the Warburg's Parza raid. The legendary warrior, Jae-woo, didn't clear it. In the real world, voices from his apartment break the tension. One person asks if he's still playing the game. Another says that maybe this'll wake him up. A third voice suggests shaking him gently. But then Jae-woo's arm wraps around the cord, and the screen goes dark. He's just been unplugged. A guy in the room mutters that he just dropped a log in his pants and says "uh-oh." Jae-woo shoots him a fierce glare and asks if he was the one who unplugged the Ethernet cable. The guy quickly apologizes. Jae-woo says that he was basically done with the raid, just a few steps away. One of the others tells the guy to stop messing around. Jae-woo starts explaining that he might look like a gaming addict, but things weren't always like this. He says that he used to be Hanam's problem solver, the brains of the operation, and their money goblin. Back then, he lived a good life. But he eventually realized how meaningless all of it was. Something shifts in him as his eyes fall on the VR capsule. He says that everything he had obsessed over before had been a waste of time. The game he's playing is called Guardian of Humanity, a VR epic made by Super AI Aquila. It's a single-player RPG with a massive open world, and Jae-woo says this place changed him. For someone who had never even read a picture book, it felt like magic. The stories, the beauty of the characters, beings of all kinds, it all pulled him in. He admits that the game didn't just entertain him, it changed him. It made him care about more than money. He and his friends ended up borrowing a huge sum, just to afford a VR capsule that cost $1 billion. He says that maybe you could call him crazy. The guy lying under him speaks up, asking how Jae-woo could treat him like this, considering he was the one who invested in him so he could game. Jae-woo laughs, saying that he understands the frustration, but he's covered for them more than a few times. He points out that one of them was caught sneaking out to golf behind his wife's back, another was working 2 secret jobs, and someone else had been simping for VTubers for a decade. He says he always had their backs. Bullcut jumps in, asking if Jae-woo really thinks he's one to talk, borrowing $1 billion just to play a game. Jae-woo glares. The guy instantly backtracks, saying he didn't mean it like that. They all question how he plans to repay the debt by writing walkthrough guides for others. Meanwhile, Jae-woo pushes through trial after trial in the game, constantly problem-solving, constantly learning. We see him typing intensely at his keyboard. When he opens his bank book, the entries are all in red, withdrawal after withdrawal. He's almost out of money. The others suggest that he should come work with them again. They remind him that he was Hanmom's fixer, after all. But Jae-woo says no, he hasn't seen the true ending yet. No one has. He says that reaching the true ending is the least he can do to repay the world that gave him so much. Then he declares that the workday is over and tells them to go home. They protest, bringing up the interest he still owes, but they add that they still believe in him. As the door closes behind them, Jae-woo turns back to his capsule. He heads straight to it and boots up the game again. He spawns inside Baird Cathedral. A message says that, due to his death, he is suspended from actions for 22 hours. He mutters that he forgot about getting disconnected, but now he wonders, how is he going to earn money? A woman's voice comments that he looks like he's struggling. He turns around and sees her spawn behind him. He asks who she is. She introduces herself as Aquilia. She says that she's the game master of Guardians of Humanity. Jae-woo bursts out laughing, questioning if this kid is being serious. She tells him not to judge a book by its cover. He says that she's totally his type. Then he asks if she really expects him to believe her, just because she popped out of nowhere and called herself Aquilia. She snaps her fingers, and the entire world freezes. Jae-woo observes that this must be the time-stopping spell. He notes that it's at least a triple S rank skill. Aquilia corrects him, saying it's not a skill. She simply shut down the server for a bit. She asks if he believes her now. She then announces that she's created a new event for the 7th anniversary, and asks if he's curious about it. At 12 p.m., a new world will open. She challenges him to be the first to clear it as a new character. Jae-woo protests that he hasn't even cleared the game as his current character, and questions if she's lost her mind. She tells him that the reward is $25 billion. Then she smirks and teases him, asking if he's scared. It strikes a nerve. She adds that she thought he wanted to see the true ending, that it might actually exist. She means the clue to reaching it, anyway. He looks shocked and reaches for something she's holding, but she pulls it back into her inventory, telling him to wait. She says that if he gives it a try, he might even get a free gift. Suddenly, he receives a notification. 30 million won has been sent to him. He stares at it, saying that this is insane. Aquilia says it's because he's her VIP. His score ranks number 1, higher than almost the next 3 players combined. He asks if she's joking. He remarks that even if he doesn't clear the event, he'll at least be safe for this month's interest. He tells her that only an idiot would say no to this, and that he'll give it a shot. She says that she knew he'd agree. That's what she expected from the top player. She says she'll send him in right away. She begins murmuring in enchantment table language. Her eyes glaze over, and a glowing halo forms above her head. Her whispers continue. Feathers start falling as angel wings spread out behind her. A rift in time tears open above her. She utters the word, installation. The NPCs in the world begin fading one by one. Jae-woo looks around, and finds himself standing on the moon, staring down at the planet. Aquilia tells him that the door behind him will lead to the new world. He asks if it's the Anywhere door, a nod to Doraemon, and wonders if the game begins once he steps through. She confirms that it does. He grins as he reaches for the door and opens it. Then he tells her not to forget the reward money, because it's time for him to get that true ending. Aquilia suddenly adds that she almost forgot to mention, if his character dies in this event, he'll die in real life too. But he's already halfway through the door. He yells, demanding to know why the hell she forgot to tell him that, but it's too late. He's already plummeting from the sky, crashing into a random forest below. He groans, wondering why it hurts. He's in a game, but that girl, was she actually telling the truth? He starts shaking with anger and curses, but then says that he'll go through with this, just to prove her wrong. It's time. The former Archduke of Steel is officially in the game. The story jumps forward. Jae-woo is seen struggling to walk, exhausted. He groans that he's so thirsty, and says that he's never going to forgive Aquilia for doing this to him. He opens his status window and sees the harsh reality. His hydration bar is empty, and his health is down to a mere 3 points. He mutters that he can't believe this new character has a max health of only 20, and only 3 mana to work with. He says this character is straight cheeks. He reflects on the fact that he's only walked for half a day, and he's already dehydrated. He wonders how the hell he's supposed to get the true ending using a character this weak. Then he hears it, the faint sound of water dripping, and instantly locks onto it. He finds a river and nearly cries out in relief. He exclaims that Bear Grylls really saved him, because if not for this, he was just about ready to drink his own piss. He adds that he's very glad the game's realism is this high. As he begins drinking from the river, his health bar starts to rise steadily. He wiggles his hips without realizing, seemingly out of pure joy. But off in the distance, in the river itself, there's a woman bathing, something that catches his eye. He notices her naked back and starts to drool, but the excitement proves too much. He loses 1 health. He wonders aloud if this is who he thinks it is. As the woman begins turning around, his eyes widen with anticipation. He's about to get blessed. But before the reveal, a prompt appears saying that he needs to pay for the DLC, He yells in frustration, asking why a VIP has to pay for additional content, and says he thought this was supposed to be a complete edition. Then a group of women suddenly start speaking to him. They say he'll need to pay up if he wants to see what happens next, and they begin to surround him. He reacts with surprise, asking how much. The next scene cuts abruptly. He's thrown into a room, now locked in with another man. The woman who was bathing before looks down at him, calling him a lewd brat and telling him to stay still. He only has 1 health left. She adds that if he keeps quiet, she might just leave his pants on. The man beside him turns and asks if he's alright. Jae-woo groans and asks how much the DLC costs. The group of women starts laughing as they walk away. The man looks confused and asks what he's even talking about. Jae-woo replies that it's nothing. The man introduces himself as Rud, a monster hunter, and says that his in-game name is Valor Steed, though he's not even sure where that name came from. He asks how Jae-woo ended up in this situation. Rud explains that he ended up near the witch's forest while chasing prey and just got unlucky. Jae-woo replies that's definitely some bad luck. Rud then says it's Jae-woo's turn to explain how he landed here. Jae-woo vaguely says it's something similar to Rud's story. He clearly doesn't want to admit he was peeping. Rud notes that whatever it was, it's unfortunate, especially since Jae-woo looks so young. Jae-woo tells him not to worry, that these kinds of tight spots are actually his specialty. Rud asks if he has a plan to escape. Jae-woo confidently says yes. He's the guy who wrote the walkthrough on how to beat these witches. Took him 3 full days to map it all out. He explains that the 5 witches of Hovel earned their title because they dwell in the Hovel forest. Their names are Gunda, Kaldora, Aldida, Fugal, and the one he got caught spying on, Hajuju. Though technically early game bosses, thousands of players have died trying to beat them. Their notoriety is well earned. But Jae-woo points out that if you look closely, they're completely disorganized. Right then, Fugal and Hajuju start bickering. Jae-woo calls out to Fugal, pretending to be overjoyed to see her alive. The system notifies him that he's now provoking her. He says that he clearly remembers Hajuju declaring that she was going to kill Fugal. Hajuju tells him to shut up, but Fugal's already worked up, turning and asking who exactly was going to kill who. The provocation lands. She hates Hajuju. Jae-woo then says he's pretty sure Hajuju also mentioned stealing all of Fugal's assets after killing her. Rud asks if he's being serious. Fugal starts falling for it and asks if Hajuju really said that. Hajuju groans, asking why Fugal would even believe him. She then justifies herself, saying that Fugal doesn't use her money anyway, so she might as well give some of it up. The status window notes that Hajuju is highly greedy when it comes to Fugal's wealth. Aldida, completely unaware of the tense atmosphere, blurts out that this must be why Hajuju was making an acid bomb. Then there's Gunda, who has a massive appetite and starts asking where the food is. Finally, Kaldora, ever the battle freak, asks if she can join the fight. As they all erupt into yelling and accusations, Jae-woo gets a twisted smile on his face, making Rud immediately regret being locked up with him. But everything's going according to plan. Despite their collective title, Jae-woo explains, these witches have no teamwork at all. Most players assume they operate as a unit, and that's how the witches rack up kills. But with some manipulation, it's easy to turn them on each other. As the witches start pulling at each other's hair, Jae-woo tells Rud it's time to make their escape. Rud agrees, saying that Jae-woo really is something else. But Jae-woo says not just yet, he's got another idea. He grabs the rug beneath them and yanks it. The witches all stumble back and fall into one of their own large cooking pots, screaming in surprise. Jae-woo turns to Rud and says now it's time to go. As they move, Jae-woo laughs, saying that the witches might be dumb, but they sure do give a ton of experience. Just then, something slithers and wraps around his leg. It's Fugal's snake, now constricting him. His movement is completely limited. Fugal says he's cunning, but she refuses to die alone. Jae-woo kicks at the snake repeatedly, but misses every time. He tells it to get the hell off, frustrated, and realizes his character is still pathetically weak. Rud steps in, saying he's got this. He draws his blade and swiftly slices the snake's head off. Then he asks if Jae-woo's alright. Jae-woo thanks him and asks if he can borrow his bow. Rud hesitates but asks if Jae-woo is any good with it, Jae-woo grabs it. It has 15 attack and 30 range. Jae-woo says he's only a little bit good with it, then aims toward a large potion above the pot. The arrow flies and smashes the potion. Everyone below looks up. Hajuju starts trembling, saying that's bad. Fugal asks what the hell it is. Juju screams that it's the acid bomb she was going to kill Fugal with. Fugal also starts screaming in panic. The liquid plummets into the pot, creating a massive explosion. A stray rock lance hits Jae-woo in the head, taking away 1 health point. Rud asks if it's all over. Jae-woo tells him to stop jinxing it. But then he gets a system notification. Achievement unlocked. These witches ain't shit. Multiple messages flood in. He's defeated the witches of Hovel Forest. He gains 320,000 experience points and 5,000 achievement points. Jae-woo confidently says they're definitely dead. Rud says that's good. He got really lucky at a low level. Rud then hands him something, saying it might be too much, but to take it as a gift of gratitude. Red dragon fruits. Jae-woo says this is unexpected and notes he doesn't remember these from his previous runs. Rud says they looked valuable, so he grabbed them from the witch's nest. Jae-woo thanks him and immediately starts chugging. The status window jokes by labeling him a dragonborn. His stats skyrocket. His health hits 220. Strength climbs to 100. Dexterity to 120. Jae-woo says that a regular player like him would never dream of having stats this high. He's hit the jackpot. Rud watches and smiles, then calls out to him. While Jae-woo is still chewing, Rud asks if he's interested in monster hunting, extending his hand. Jae-woo looks confused, as a relationship route with the hunter appears. He finishes chewing and replies that he has other things to do. Rud says that must mean he's a busy young man. Jae-woo realizes something. He doesn't have a class yet. All that experience is currently going nowhere. If he leaves it unspent, it'll disappear in a month. As Rud turns to leave, Jae-woo calls out, asking if 3 months is enough. Rud laughs and says doesn't he mean 3 years? They walk deeper into the forest. Rud tells Jae-woo that he'll give him his first goal. He should go hide deep in the forest. In 30 minutes, Rud will come after him. Jae-woo immediately commits to getting the monster tracking skill from the hunter's skill tree, making rapid progress. He knows this forest inside and out. He's explored it countless times, down to the location of every twig and landmark. The confusing trees, the poisonous mushrooms, the beasts worse than witches, none of it throws him off anymore. And now, with the red dragon fruit boosting his body, he's operating at max capacity. He thinks there's no way he'll be found so easily. But then, as he's looking around nervously, Rud suddenly appears behind him and says, "Peekaboo." Jae-woo is stunned. Rud announces that's 50 points, but adds 10 bonus points because of Jae-woo's effort. Jae-woo demands to know how he did it. Rud says his face is full of curiosity. He adds that it's been a while since he's had this much fun teaching someone. Then he says it's time to get serious. Jae-woo's quest gets updated. Hunter's hazing is now Hunter's trial. He's officially earned the Monster Hunter class. Along with that, he receives several new skills: herbalism, intermediate swordsmanship, survivalism, musket shooting, and tracking. Jae-woo starts laughing darkly and says he's looking forward to working with him. 3 months pass. Rud says that it's impressive, Jae-woo has already mastered everything. Jae-woo says that if Rud doesn't believe in him, then he should go hide somewhere and let him find him. Rud pats him on the shoulder, saying that he admires his confidence and that he'll give it a try. He adds that if Jae-woo doesn't find him within an hour, he's making dinner tonight. Jae-woo says that's perfectly fine, and that he's looking forward to the meal. As Rud walks off, Jae-woo smiles to himself. The expression on his face is more mischievous than anything. Rud begins climbing up a rocky slope, saying to himself that it's refreshing to meet such a passionate apprentice, even this late in his life. He decides that he won't hide too far, and figures if he picks a spot by the cliff, Jae-woo won't find him in an hour. As Rud settles into place and begins relaxing, Jae-woo suddenly appears in frame, grabbing onto Rud's leg. Rud slowly looks down with an "oh shit" face, as Jae-woo says peekaboo. Rud is stunned. He says that it must have been luck. But when he tries hiding again, the result is the same. Over and over again, Jae-woo finds him. Rud finally says that he can't believe it. Skills he took 5 years to master, Jae-woo has picked up in just 3 months. Rud heads deeper into a nearby cave this time, telling himself that there's no way Jae-woo can find him here. As he walks further in, he notes that it's a hellhound's nest and looks visibly nervous. Jae-woo appears behind him again, laughing, and says that tip number 1 from Guardian of Humanity is that even earthquakes won't wake a sleeping hellhound. He then asks if he passed the test. Rud says he guesses so and congratulates him, saying that he's mastered everything remarkably well. Jae-woo says it's all thanks to Rud's guidance, but Rud tells him that it's clearly just his natural talent. The truth, however, is that Jae-woo maxed out all his skills using the enormous amount of experience he gained from defeating the witches. Rud still says it's amazing, especially how he remembered every little piece of monster ecology advice. He then adds that he doesn't recall ever teaching him about hellhounds. Jae-woo admits that he's actually the author of the Monster Ecology Guidebook. Rud bursts into laughter, saying that he's never met anyone like Jae-woo before and is sure he'll go far. He asks what Jae-woo plans to do now and if it has to do with that goal he mentioned before. Jae-woo says that first things first, he's going to make a lot of money. Everything starts with cash. Rud says that's good because he has a close friend who works as a mercenary. He tells Jae-woo to try connecting with him. Jae-woo thinks that it's actually a pretty good idea. Mercenary work is the perfect early game cash flow. It's free, flexible, and if he's lucky, he might even meet some of the Guardians along the way. Rud hands him a badge, saying that it's his old mercenary emblem, and his friend will recognize it. He wishes him good luck and calls him by his in-game name, Valor. Jae-woo thanks him. Jae-woo says that so far, he's defeated the witches, gained a class, and now has a legitimate path forward. At this pace, even the true ending might not be out of reach. He glances at his hand, remembering Akila's words, her question about whether he also wanted to know if the true ending existed. He considers that maybe it really does. He goes to log out, but the option is grayed out. He says that he never knows when he'll die here, but that uncertainty is what makes it thrilling. He slaps his own face and declares that she better wait for him, because he's coming for that true ending. With that, his quest, Hunter's Trial, is marked complete, and a new quest appears: joining the Mercenary Guild. Far away on the moon, Aquila watches it all unfold from a tiny little TV. She's laughing uncontrollably, saying that the whole thing was priceless and that she's really glad she's been keeping an eye on him. Someone behind her asks if he's the one, saying that he definitely isn't just an ordinary guy. Aquila blushes slightly and teases, asking the other woman if she's interested in him. The woman is revealed to be another deity, Valfara. Valfara says that as a god, she doesn't see humans that way and asks why Aquila would even suggest such a thing. Aquila answers with a playful shrug, saying it's because he's cute. Valfara doesn't even crack a smile. Aquila calls her too serious, saying she used to be a lot more fun. Valfara replies that those days are long gone. She then asks if Aquila really paid off all of Jae-woo's debts. Aquila says that was taken care of a while ago. Valfara says that's a bit twisted. He's still working hard to repay something that's already been resolved. Aquila says that's what makes it so entertaining. Valfara calls her ruthless. Aquila grins and thanks her for the compliment. Valfara asks if Jae-woo is part of her big plan or just a toy. Aquila takes a moment to think before adjusting her seat and saying that he's more like a promising talent. Her eyes glint slightly, hinting at something obsessive. She then says that she just wants to keep watching him. Back on the ground, Jae-woo lets out a long sigh and collapses to the forest floor. He says that his legs are killing him and wonders why the forest is so damn big. With his current stats, he can get through it in half a day, but it's still exhausting. He says it's time to move, as the mercenary corps is in the town just ahead. A bell rings in the distance. As he enters the town, women dressed as maids welcome him to Francois, the best tavern in Frankfurt. They ask how they can help him. He says he's looking for someone, and one of the maids offers to show him to a seat. Jae-woo looks around and says that the tavern really is a classic spot for intel gathering, booze, rowdy people, and the smell of amazing food. He notes that folks are more talkative in good moods, and on top of that, the waitresses are all cute as hell. He then asks loudly if anyone knows a person named Rabies Schultz. The entire mood shifts. The tavern falls into a stunned silence. One of the waitresses tells him that name is forbidden around here. Jae-woo asks why, and another waitress starts freaking out, explaining that Schultz is too dangerous. She says her boyfriend once got involved with him and came back like a mummy, barely alive. Jae-woo starts panicking, wondering just what kind of lunatic Rudd introduced him to. Two old men sitting nearby start whispering about their own past run-ins, which only deepens his dread. One of the waitresses urgently tells him to leave, saying Schultz will be there any minute. Jae-woo tries asking why they're all so afraid. Then, suddenly, he feels something rub across his face. He stiffens and demands to know who it was. He turns and sees a strange man standing before him. It's Rabies Schultz. Schultz looks down, sees the badge on Jae-woo's waist, and immediately recognizes it as Rudd's. He starts laughing, saying that this is perfect timing because he's been looking for a new battle slave, or, as he corrects himself, companion. Jae-woo is stunned and asks what he just said, muttering to himself that Rudd is a total jerk and that next time they meet, he's definitely going to kill him. He adds that this dude is an absolute freak. He then says that somehow, he's ended up a conscript dragged into a war between the Prince Elector and the forces of Bazamet. Schultz grins and says he's quick on the uptake and clearly a smart one. Jae-woo says that even though it feels like he's getting force drafted into some fantasy war, this could be a real opportunity. The Prince Elector is one of the game's guardians. If he can get close to him, maybe he can learn more about the others. Suddenly, a loud horn blares, and Schultz smirks, saying that speak of the devil, here he comes. A system warning appears. This is an ambush. Jae-woo immediately takes 30 points of damage as his body slams down. Now watching the procession, he sees the Prince Elector riding by, surrounded by his forces. Schultz says that Jae-woo would fit in with that group. Jae-woo, however, says that this is very different from what he imagined. He says he's usually on the other side of things, but this time the Prince Elector looks more like a villain than anything else. Then Jae-woo freezes as he sees something, or someone. He mutters in disbelief. He can't believe she's here. Riding alongside the Prince Elector is a woman with long blonde hair. He says that of all people, he did not expect Dame Volpurgis to show up. The Prince Elector glances at her, asking if something is wrong since she appears distracted. She responds that nothing's the matter and lowers her gaze. He reminds her that the battlefield is waiting. Jae-woo explains that in his previous playthroughs, she was his companion, but no matter what he tried, he could never save her. Every single time, she died to the same monster. He says it was a nightmare of a creature. A wall he could never break through. A barrier he failed to overcome. Schultz notices Jae-woo's distant expression and asks if something's bothering him. Jae-woo tells him no, brushing it off. But internally, he vows that even if he has to risk his life, he will reach an ending where she survives. They proceed toward the mercenary camp, where warriors are training with real swords, shouting and swinging with full force. Jae-woo observes the scene and remarks that this feels more like marine training than any game. Schultz laughs, saying the fun's already started. They're selecting team leaders through sparring matches, and there's real money at stake. Jae-woo comments that pride and cash are one dangerous mix. Still, he says his only goal is to get in contact with the Prince Elector, so it's best to keep a low profile for now. He decides to stay quiet. Schultz then asks if that means Jae-woo's participating, and without waiting for a response, he grips Jae-woo's shoulder, saying that he's definitely in. After all, there's no way Rudd would send over a clueless rookie. Jae-woo groans and asks why his opinion doesn't seem to matter here. Schultz raises his voice to the entire training yard, asking if anyone wants to take a run at the new guy. The mercenaries respond with immediate enthusiasm, calling out that they'll go first, eager to get at the fresh meat. Jae-woo sighs and realizes he might not even have the option to back out. He figures he should show some strength before meeting the Prince Elector anyway. A crowd forms as one of the soldiers steps up. He introduces himself as Max, saying it's nice to meet Jae-woo, but then wonders what's up with Jae-woo's body, since he looks like a twig. Jae-woo mutters that Max's shirt is the only thing running its mouth and adds that his own physique would rack up thousands of likes online. Schultz asks if both sides are ready. When they confirm, the match begins. Max charges forward with a yell, swinging his sword dramatically. In a blink, Max is laid out, completely defeated by a single hit. The spectators gasp, stunned, as Jae-woo gains 15 fame. They ask what just happened. Jae-woo explains that this is expected. After consuming the red dragon fruits, his current strength is on par with an ogre. The others say they have to see it for themselves and insist on fighting him too. Jae-woo begins to get swarmed. He tells them to come one at a time. Using intermediate swordsmanship, he defeats the next opponent, gaining another 15 fame. Then he ties one up. Then, somehow, headbutts another out cold. A bald man steps up, saying that this whole thing is turning ridiculous and the others are embarrassing themselves against a rookie. His name is Charlotte, and despite the feminine name, his body resembles that of a professional bodybuilder. Jae-woo stares at him and wonders aloud if he's even human. He decides this is too much and thinks maybe he should just combat log, but remembers he can't log out. He tells himself that he needs to rest, but Charlotte leaps at him with no warning. Jae-woo mutters that fate really sucks and says that if it's come to this, he'll deal with it properly. Grabbing Charlotte by the arm and collar, he executes a perfect judo throw, slamming the giant into the concrete. Charlotte drops instantly. Jae-woo gains 30 fame and comments that the guy was way too heavy. The surrounding mercenaries are in disbelief. They can't believe Charlotte lost. Schultz starts blushing for some reason. The others gather around Jae-woo, calling him a monster for beating Charlotte. They say he's scrawny but his body is built for battle, and they're itching to challenge him themselves. Schultz pushes through the crowd and tells everyone to move aside. He starts laughing with a twisted grin. Jae-woo guesses that maybe Schultz is about to go easy on him out of respect for being Rudd's apprentice. But Schultz announces something else entirely. He declares that Jae-woo is chosen, and from this moment, he's the new group leader for the upcoming battle. Jae-woo immediately questions his life choices, sinking into a silent existential crisis. Around him, the mercenaries cheer and begin donning armor. Jae-woo looks around at the chaos and wonders what kind of disaster he's been dragged into. The system notifies him that the quest, join the mercenary guild, is now complete, and a new quest has begun. Retake Harfheim Hill. Scene cuts. A real battle is about to take place. Schultz yells for everyone to charge as the entire unit rushes forward, weapons in hand, toward an advancing force of monsters. Jae-woo is among them, slicing through an enemy's neck. He explains that right now, they are allied with the Prince Elector's forces. They're locked in direct conflict against the Demon King's orc army. Their mission is clear. They must steal the enemy commander's military flag. The strategy is to smash through the front lines and, using the chaos, slip through the gaps to disrupt the formation completely. But these are orcs, brutal, relentless, and the most coordinated force on the continent. And as the group leader, it's Jae-woo's job to stop them. As two orcs charge him, Jae-woo ducks and weaves between their attacks. He asks himself why this is his job, calling it ridiculous. He explains that he originally planned to pick up some military merits and then run off quietly. In the orc camp, a scout reports to the orc commander that their spearmen are collapsing. The commander calls it nonsense, saying there's no way their elite spearmen are falling apart. He takes a spyglass to see for himself. As he peers through, he squints and asks what the hell he's looking at. He sees Charlotte and the rest of the mercs tearing through the lines, and sweat forms on his brow. He shouts for the musket squad to form up and open fire. They fire, but their bullets bounce off the mercenaries' shields. Jae-woo calls it pathetic, mocking them for not even knowing what K2 is. He adds that without rapid fire, muskets require a rotation firing system, and while they reload, now is the time to act. Jae-woo charges ahead and tells the others to follow, yelling at them to rip the enemy apart. An orc watches them advance and says that he can't believe his comrades are getting blown away by someone who looks like a shrimp. He adds that these humans aren't normal. But he refuses to let them take their flag. It's the pride of their entire tribe. As the orc lunges to protect it, he screams that he'll never surrender, only to be instantly thrown aside. The mercenaries hoist the flag up, cheering. Jae-woo says now he just needs to hold out a little longer, and the military merit is his. The system notifies him that he has stolen the flag, gaining 30 leadership and 20 achievement points. A loud horn suddenly blares. Max runs up, panicking. He tells Jaewoo that this is bad. Their allies are retreating, and orc reinforcements are directly in front of them. Jaewoo curses, realizing that victory was within reach. He asks why the others are pulling out now. Max suggests maybe they should drop the flag and get out of there. Jaewoo demands to know what kind of logic that is. Max explains that they're completely surrounded. The camera pans to show Jaewoo, Charlotte, and another merc in the center of a tightening orc formation. Then an orc with a massive sword steps forward. He introduces himself as the hidden boss, the Grand General of the Orc Army, Kalyan. He praises their bravery, calling them formidable human warriors. He offers them a deal. Leave the flag behind and retreat, and he will honor their courage by sparing their lives. Jaewoo refuses to trust that offer. He declares that if the orcs take even one step forward, he'll personally shove the flag into Charlotte's underwear drawer. Charlotte glares menacingly, and Kalyan looks disgusted, saying there's no way they'd desecrate the flag by putting it in such a filthy place. Jaewoo asks the orcs if they seriously believe there are rules in war. He says that if it means winning, he'll smear their flag all over Charlotte's ass. The orcs begin to panic, their formation tightening, muskets raised in all directions. Charlotte, committed to the bit, starts lowering his pants, but the orcs don't flinch. Kalyan gives the order to fire, and before they can even react, shots rain down around them. Charlotte fumbles with his pants, trying to pull them back up. Jaewoo says that, unlike previous playthroughs, they're actually willing to destroy their own flag this time, which means things have gone seriously sideways. He quickly assesses the situation, realizing just how dangerous it's become. He sees several of his men getting hit by stray shots. He mutters that bringing out the Grand General at this stage is pure cheating. With his current fame and rank, he doesn't stand a chance against that monster. Panic sets in. He's stuck, unsure what to do next. Memories from his past runs flash through his mind. Faces of comrades, victories and failures, and Aquilia's voice warning that if he dies in the game, he dies in real life. He wonders if this is just another world now, considering she's a god. His chest tightens. Max yells at him, demanding orders or they'll all get wiped out. Jaewoo admits he forgot, and starts shaking uncontrollably. Then, suddenly, he bursts into laughter. The others say he's gone mad. Jaewoo grabs the trumpet. Charlotte tells him there's no point. Reinforcements aren't coming. Jaewoo tells him to just watch. Taking a deep breath, he blows into the trumpet with everything he has. Max shouts that he blew it in the wrong direction, nowhere near their allies. Jaewoo says he knows, and that they just need a distraction, anything to block the incoming bullets. He silently pleads with Aquilia, saying that they're even now. If she has any sense of loyalty, she won't abandon her VIP. An orc cries out to his comrades to charge. One leaps into the air, spear in hand, diving straight for Jaewoo. The tip inches closer to his face, but suddenly, something flashes through the sky. The spear stops mid-flight. An arrow pierces the orc's throat, dropping him instantly. A figure on horseback rides above the chaos. Dame Volpurgis, appearing like a divine warrior. She descends beside Jaewoo and the others, landing like a Valkyrie. She tells them not to give up and to raise their swords. Talion, from across the battlefield, commands his soldiers not to interfere. He declares that this will be a duel between him and the Countess Volpurgis herself, and that it will be a noble one-on-one. Volpurgis commends his spirit and immediately lunges, her blade aimed at his head. He narrowly avoids it. Sparks erupt as the two begin exchanging powerful blows. Jaewoo watches, stunned, remarking that they're evenly matched. Volpurgis is still early in her story arc, and she's already this strong. He watches as she sends Talion's sword flying back with a thunderous shockwave. Then, something catches him off guard. Volpurgis spins through the air, lands a precise kick to Talion's face, and blood flies. Talion stumbles, regains his stance, and begins laughing, saying that he expected no less. Jaewoo says that it's not just her swordsmanship, her hand-to-hand skills are elite. She must belong to the sisterhood of Volpurgia. It all makes sense now. She confirms she serves with a heart full of faith. He laughs, impressed, and she tells him it's getting late. She dashes forward, engaging Talion again. Their blades clash violently. Talion grits his teeth and slams his sword into the ground, cracking it. But Volpurgis is already in the air. She brings her sword down from above, smashing the back of his head. He drops to his knees. He says it was a good match, then collapses completely. As the orcs begin carrying their captain away and retreating, Jaewu just stands there, speechless. He says he can't believe she took out the Grand General with one strike, but then again, it's Volpurgis. As the orcs flee, she turns to Jaewu and asks if he's the leader of the mercenaries. She says that she could feel his courage from a distance and introduces herself. Jaewu shakes her hand and introduces himself in return, saying it's a pleasure. She replies the same and looks at him with respect. He tells her that if she hadn't come, they all would have been dead. He says that he's no longer the Archduke and should have exercised more caution. She asks why he's holding his head low, then gestures to the side. All the mercenaries come running over, shouting for their leader. Max calls out to him, holding up the flag. They still have it. Jaewu's chest tightens. He thinks about how close they came to dying together, and his whole body starts trembling. Then he lets out a scream, declaring that this is how it should be. He says this feeling is what it's all about, exhilarating. Back at the tavern, a little girl bursts through the door, yelling for Charlotte. She looks distressed. Meanwhile, Charlotte is stuffing his face with food. She asks if he went off to another war and if he's hurt. He reassures her that he's fine and calls her Bap. Jaewu asks if that's his daughter. Schultz is dumbfounded, asking what the hell Jaewu is talking about. Charlotte is only 15. Jaewu reacts with disbelief. He says there's no way. The girl, Baptiste, begs Jaewu to pay for Charlotte's medical bills. Jaewu is hit with the confusion status. Charlotte thanks Jaewu, saying that it's because of him they all made it back alive. The rest of the mercenaries agree. They tell him he saved them. Jaewu awkwardly tells them to just eat. They notice him blushing and start teasing him, saying he's adorable when embarrassed. Then, Volpurgis enters the tavern, calling out for Jaewu. He's still blushing when he sees her. She tells him to follow her to the Harfheim forward base. She says the Elector himself has summoned him and plans to honor him with a reward for his efforts. She says it's the highest honor a mercenary can receive. Jaewu notes that she seems different from the Volpurgis he knew before, more cheerful now. He mentions that she looks happier than he feels. She tells him he can just call her by name, and he agrees. She gestures toward the soldiers outside, saying these are the lives he saved with his courage. Without him, they would have died. She explains that they're citizens of the Empire and thanks to him, they still live. She asks what more reason she needs to be happy. Jaewu says he understands now. In the past, she once stood up for him too. She hasn't changed, only their roles have. She announces to the Elector that she has brought the man. The Elector praises her and confirms that Jaewu is the one called Valor. He introduces himself as Philip. Jaewu says it's an honor and notes internally that this is what it feels like to face a true guardian. The pressure is unreal. Philip says they call Jaewu the Reaper of the Field now. He says his bravery was astonishing. He was like a lion. Jaewu says he's flattered, but Philip dismisses that, saying that a man of merit should be recognized. He declares that Jaewu's comrades will each receive 100 florins, and Jaewu himself will receive 300. Jaewu notes that 100 florins is a full year's salary for a spearman. He says he'll repay the kindness. Philip nods, then asks if there's anything else Jaewu wants to say. Jaewu requests permission to regroup with his comrades and rest in Weitenbeer. Philip says that's quite far from the warfront but grants the request, saying Jaewu can take a wagon from the supply stockpile. Jaewu expresses his gratitude and asks if he may say one more thing. He looks toward Volpurgis, who smiles at him. He smiles back. He says he has a curiosity. Philip invites him to speak, but the air changes as the Elector releases killing intent. Jaewu breaks a sweat and nervously asks for Philip's opinion on the war. The room becomes tense. People begin murmuring. Even Volpurgis seems uneasy. Jaewu says he knew this would throw everyone off, but it can't be helped. He's just a mercenary. Philip asks what Jaewu thinks instead. Jaewu says that he only sees things from a low vantage point, but there's something troubling him. Someone laughs, saying he thinks he's important now that he has one military merit. Another mocks him, saying he probably heard some garbage intel. Volpurgis interrupts, saying there's an old proverb. Even when crossing a stone bridge, one ought to tap it first. She urges Philip to at least listen. Philip's pet advisor scoffs, asking how a mere countess dares speak like that. But Philip tells his pet uncle that Volpurgis is the niece of the Elector of Byron and should be treated with proper respect. Jaewu thinks to himself that, as expected, even Philip won't ignore her. The uncle grumbles and stands down. Philip tells Jaewu to go on. He wants to hear his view. Jaewu inhales deeply. He declares that an ambush is coming. Instantly, the tension rises. Philip says he assumes there's a basis for that claim. Jaewu confirms. He explains that Demon King Bahamut has always favored ambushes and betrayal. Looking back at the Kingdom of Toa War 10 years ago and the Margrave Halt battle 6 years prior, both were decided by surprise tactics. Therefore, he warns, it would be dangerous to overlook betrayal as one of Bahamut's main weapons. The uncle stands stiff, looking visibly uneasy. Philip turns his gaze sharply across the room and asks if there's an imposter among them. Jaewu replies that it's only a possibility, not a certainty. Philip smiles, but it's a cold one. He says that a little caution never hurts. But that's all it is, caution. Then, almost instantly, he unleashes a wave of killing intent, making the entire room tense up. He says Jaewu is quite bold and reminds him that the only reason his head is still on his shoulders is because he allows it. He asks if Jaewu understands his place. Volpurgis steps forward, opening her mouth to speak, but Jaewu lowers his head and says he understands. Volpurgis recognizes that Philip is the one in the wrong here, but she holds her tongue. Jaewu apologizes for overstepping and exits the room without further comment. Once outside, Jaewu mutters that something doesn't add up. In his previous runs, Philip had always been cautious and calculating. This time, however, he seems arrogant, too bold. Jaewu notes that this isn't the only change. Red dragon fruits, which typically appear much later in the story, are already present. Volpurgis, too. She had never appeared this early in his past playthroughs. Everything's different. As he ponders the changes, a voice calls out to him. He turns, confused, and sees Volpurgis catching her breath. Her face is slightly flushed, and she says she finally caught up to him. He asks what she wants, and she says he moves too fast. When he asks if she ran after him out of concern, she says of course she did. Internally, Jaewu begins freaking out, calling her adorable. She says she wants to apologize on Philip's behalf, for his words and actions, and if there's anything Jaewu desires, she'll make it happen. He's free to name whatever he wants. Jaewu starts shaking slightly, stunned by the offer. He mutters to himself that he could ask for something outrageous. He jokes in his mind that he might be a pervert. Volpurgis, however, says not to underestimate her. She reminds him that she's from one of the wealthiest noble families in the empire. Jaewu thinks that's great and assumes she must have a lot of luxurious clothes. He's clearly spiraling. Eventually, he calms down and says he'd like a quill and a pistol. She's surprised, asking if that's really all. He says it is. He explains that his dream has always been to be a cavalryman, and now he has a chance to learn horseback riding. The pistol? That's just always been part of the dream. As he fights to hold back tears, she asks why he's crying. He says she wouldn't understand. She says she's never met someone so unselfish. She doesn't realize what he's sacrificed. Then she says this isn't the place for that kind of talk and grabs his hand, saying she'll show him. Jaewu can't believe this side of her exists. He starts blushing again. He's completely folded. Later, the battlefield between Philip and Bahamut burns in the background. Philip declares that today is the day he finally kills him. Bahamut, unimpressed, says someone kill Philip already. His breath reeks. One of Bahamut's assistants appears, announcing that all preparations for war are complete. Bahamut tells him good job. The man hesitates, then asks if Bahamut really plans on using Hexix. Bahamut rolls his eyes and asks why this is being brought up again. The man warns that Hexix is too cruel. If they capture Philip, he could be used as a valuable hostage, but if handed over to that freak, no one knows what will happen. Bahamut says he'll handle it. Then his ring starts buzzing. He answers, and a voice on the other end chirps that she's ready. He tells her good work and to stay sharp. His expression shifts slightly. He looks worried. and he tells her to take it easy this time. The woman on the other end, Hexix, laughs, asking what he means by that. She claims she never goes too far. He says she always does. Hexix twirls and grins, repeating that she always goes easy. She insists she's never overdone it, even once. It becomes obvious she's completely unhinged. There's no logic, no reasoning with her. Meanwhile, Jae-woo rides through a dense forest, marveling at the speed of his horse, Philly. He can't believe this was a spare. It's definitely worthy of a gift from Volpurgis. She even gave him a potion worth 1,000 florins. He says that's the price of an entire building. The potion can heal any wound completely. Suddenly, an explosion erupts behind him. He says the battle's already started, and he has to hurry. Even someone like Philip won't be able to handle this war unscathed. He says Philip will probably charge in recklessly and end up getting caught. Cut to the battlefield. Philip is already injured. His uncle stands next to him, side by side with Bazamet. Philip stares in disbelief and asks his uncle why he would betray the empire and still call himself a knight. His uncle says Philip doesn't understand the situation and tells him to listen carefully. He accuses Philip of plotting rebellion against the emperor. Upon realizing this, he says he chose to side with Bazamet and is arresting Philip for treason. He raises his thumb to his own 8 chins and gestures with a throat-cutting motion. Philip says no one will believe such an absurd lie. Bazamet steps forward, pushing Philip's head beneath his foot, telling him to face reality. He calls Philip a delusional lunatic. He orders his men to tie him up, snapping his fingers. As soldiers run toward him with ropes, Philip yells at them to back off, reminding them that he is a noble elector. He starts crying. Bazamet tells them to shut him up, calling him noisy. Just then, Volpurgis drops from the sky and kicks Bazamet square in the face. The impact is solid, but Bazamet manages to stay standing. She commands the other knights to use this chance to escort Philip to safety. Philip's uncle begins shouting, saying they can't let him escape. Bazamet tells him to shut up, complaining that his voice is annoying. Then he speaks into his ring again, telling Hexix they're en route. Hexix asks if it's time already. Bazamet questions if she isn't ready yet. She says she is. She was just playing. He tells her to focus. She agrees and then calls out to her, "Boys," telling them it's mealtime. The strange, twisted creatures she refers to as dogs leap forward. She says they must be starving and it's time to chew on their new toy. The toy thereafter is none other than Jae-woo. As he rides through the forest, he uses his pistol to shoot at the incoming beasts. He says Hexix is using zombie dogs, a tactic she's known for, wearing opponents down before devouring them. One of the creatures leaps toward him from behind. Jae-woo elbows it midair and follows up with a clean shot. He calls it a 2-piece combo, saying he knows her style. He notes that there aren't many left near him, meaning most of them are after Philip. He doesn't care about Philip. What matters to him is Volpurgis. He kicks his horse into full sprint, saying he needs to get there fast. Ahead, Philip and Volpurgis ride side by side, surrounded by the creatures. The dogs begin circling to block their path. Philip mutters that his mana control is off. It's all Bazamet's doing. He calls it a disgusting trick. Volpurgis shouts that it's dangerous. Philip glances over as one of the dogs leaps at him. In fear, he nearly soils himself. Volpurgis intercepts the beast, cleaving its head clean off. Then she follows up with a powerful kick, sending the head flying. She asks if he's okay, and he nods. She tells him the area is uncharted territory. Humans don't venture here often, and he needs to be more careful. Suddenly, screams erupt. Philip turns and sees one of his soldiers being devoured alive. The horror dawns on him. Volpurgis tells him to wait a little longer, but he yells her name and says they can leave her behind. As they ride, the dogs gain ground. Volpurgis starts getting overwhelmed. Philip mutters that he's different from her. His life, and hers, aren't equal. He says she's expendable. Volpurgis grits her teeth, questioning whether this is truly what nobility has come to. She mutters that if she had only listened to Jae-woo before, this could have been avoided. She blames herself for ignoring his warnings. Hexix, now close, laughs and says they're hilarious. She throws a thread around Volpurgis's throat and begins pulling. Volpurgis reaches out toward Philip, her hand outstretched. He turns, shocked, but takes only one glance before riding away. Walpurgis falls off her horse, dragged by the thread. She coughs and says they're cursed to have someone like him as their elector. Her body shakes. Hexix swings her whip and says she's wrong. You need to be exactly that heartless to survive as an elector. Then, without warning, Hexix calls her sister. Walpurgis shouted in anger that Hejaz should immediately retract her earlier words. She went on to explain that the position of elector was passed down through generations, with the authority to choose the next emperor of the empire. Each elector ruled her territory like an emperor. It was a role not to be underestimated. Hejaz commanded the demons beside her to continue tracking Philip. They responded in unison with, yes. Then Hejaz turned back to Walpurgis and provoked her. She asked if Walpurgis, too, carried elector blood. Clenching the whip, murder radiated from her. Her red eyes flashed. She asked if she had hit a sore spot. Walpurgis, furious beyond control, roared that Hejaz was a bastard. She punched fiercely at Hejaz, but Hejaz held her ground and simply dodged the attack. A smirk curled at the corner of Hejaz's mouth. Shock filled Walpurgis's eyes. She felt a jolt of pain surge through her. Her body trembled violently and she was sick with pain. Hejaz erupted in maniacal laughter, praising Walpurgis's scream. That's a fine scream, she said, licking her fingers. Wonderful. Now I'm even more eager to torture you. Laughing wildly in midair, she brandished the whip and began lashing Walpurgis repeatedly. The whip struck her. Her body spasmed uncontrollably, and she collapsed to her knees. Walpurgis whispered in agony that if it were Sir Valor. The memory of Han Jae-woo flashed before her. If it had been Han Jae-woo, surely he could have found a way to overcome it. But she thought that this was the limit of her endurance. Hejaz's expression turned savage as she shouted that it wasn't over yet. Raising the whip again, she prepared to strike but suddenly stopped, confusion crossing her face as a shape collapsed in the distance. She stared in astonishment at a corpse of a zombie hound. Hejaz wondered aloud what dog corpse this was. At that moment, Han Jae-woo appeared behind her. Han Jae-woo delivered a punch that struck Hejaz squarely in the face. Hejaz spewed blood from her mouth and was sent flying backwards, crashing to the ground with a wail. Han Jae-woo landed firmly. Walpurgis knelt, staring at him in stunned disbelief, tears in her eyes. Trembling, she called out Han Jae-woo's name softly, thinking that Han Jae-woo really was a hero. Han Jae-woo walked past Walpurgis, who had collapsed. Without looking back, Han Jae-woo stopped, turned, and lifted her up. Han Jae-woo cradled her. Hejaz, shielding her face, thought that he had killed a zombie hound somehow, in a way she had not noticed. Han Jae-woo had circled behind her. Standing motionless, expression cold, Han Jae-woo spoke, observing that Hejaz was still a freak. He raised a gun and pointed it at Hejaz. A faint smile curved Hejaz's lips as she asked if Han knew her, calling him brother. Han Jae-woo, holding the gun, answered coldly. Don't use that face to call me brother, it's disgusting. Hejaz smiled mockingly and taunted that a gun, indeed, had a longer reach than her whip but told Han to be sure to aim correctly, brother. Laughing wildly, Hejaz said confidently that her whip was many times faster than a reloaded bullet. Han Jae-woo squeezed the trigger. A blast shot out, whizzing past Hejaz. Her whip wrapped around his neck, leaving him gritting his teeth. Hejaz lifted with her arm to pull. She pulled with force, shouting excitedly, "Come at me." Hejaz rammed her head brutally into Han's face. Han was knocked back. Blood spurted from his mouth. He was sent flying through the air, tumbling. Hejaz shouted loudly that she wasn't done yet. She landed solidly and laughed excitedly before whipping again, hitting Han Jae-woo hard and pushing him back. Han steadied himself, toes touching the ground, and lunged forward again. Dodging Hejaz's attack with agile movement, Han closed the distance. Hejaz looked on in shock as she thought her whip style was top tier even in the military, yet Han dodged every strike and closed in. Han raised his gun again. Hejaz roared, "You think I'll let you go?" Han quickly holstered his gun. Hejaz prepared to swing her whip and she extended her clawed hand. Han drew a dagger and chuckled. "Watch this." The dagger slashed through the air, splattering blood. Han Jae-woo casually flicked the blade clean and laughed as he asked whether that rush had felt good. He then said that, deep down, he was built for close quarters combat. Hijaz clutched her wounded eye, cursing herself for being too distracted. Losing an eye was no small thing. Gritting her teeth, she muttered that she needed time to recover. Dark wings unfurled from her back, demonic and leathery, and as she spread them, she prepared to take flight. She told Han Jae-woo that she had to leave now, saying her schedule was far too packed to stay. Han Jae-woo sneered with a mocking smile and provoked her, asking if she was retreating now. Hijaz, looking down from above, dismissed the taunt. She stated that mind games wouldn't work on her, she never fought battles she couldn't win. Han Jae-woo raised his gun again and asked why Hijaz still acted so cocky. He declared that today he was switching to ranged damage. Hijaz burst into crazed laughter, claiming that she could deal with bullets mid-air. But just then, a dark blur zipped past her eyes. The confidence drained from her face, and a sudden chunk of flesh was taken out from her waist. White smoke hissed from the barrel. Han Jae-woo commented dryly that of course, shooting bats was always satisfying. Standing before the collapsed Hijaz, Han Jae-woo sighed and said aloud that the woman really was a sick freak. Hijaz groaned on the ground. Han Jae-woo licked his dagger and said it was time to see what kind of loot this freak had dropped. Gold flickered in his eyes. Hijaz whimpered pitifully, calling him brother, through teary eyes, and asked if he really intended to kill her. She sobbed, playing the helpless act. But Han Jae-woo raised the dagger coldly and said there was no point pretending he told her to starve. Hijaz cried out in shock, one last time. Then came the system message. You have defeated Pazermit's lieutenant, Whipmaster Hijaz. Loot obtained. Hijaz's cloak, Hijaz's whip, magic binding rope, physical enhancement potion. Venom dragon, Herguma's poison, Herguma antidote, 2,000 florin spirit coins. Han Jae-woo nodded to himself. He thought that this was nearly everything he needed. Good thing he hadn't sold those earlier items. Now he had to hurry, time was short. He used a healing potion and stared at the bottle in his hand. A full vial of high-grade recovery elixir. Looking down at Valpurgis on the ground, he whispered a promise to save her no matter what. The system window popped up. Effect. Completely restores all wounds and ailments. Usage. Apply directly to the injured area. Sitting in a clearing, with Valpurgis limp in his embrace, Han Jae-woo looked at the instructions again. To apply it meant getting under the armor. His cheeks flushed slightly, but he told himself to stay calm. This was just a medical procedure. He took a deep breath and reminded himself that there was no room for impure thoughts. He clenched his jaw and raised the green potion. Of course there couldn't be any hesitation, he thought. His real name was Han Jae-woo, a name most people had already forgotten. His father had died from illness when he was a child, and his mother collapsed from overwork. At 18, he was alone. In a memory, a man confronted him angrily, accusing him of lashing out just because he'd been tricked. The man demanded to know why Han was dragging others into his mess. Another man barked at him, asking what the hell his problem was. Was he some clueless rookie? Han Jae-woo had replied calmly that he was just doing a job for money. He was the fixer from Hanam-dong, 22 years old. A bespectacled man handed him an envelope and thanked him, said it was a small token of appreciation. Han Jae-woo counted the money, 10 bills, all hundreds. He double-checked the amount. In another scene, Han Jae-woo stood in the kitchen and told the man that it was only a temporary solution. With that kind of money, he said, the man would be better off paying his debts. The man panicked and stammered, saying he had a job coming up this week. Han Jae-woo clicked his tongue in irritation. The man with glasses pleaded not to be stared at like that. He said excitedly that once he completed the job, he'd get 10 million won. That number caught Han Jae-woo off guard. He asked if one job could really pay that much. The man confirmed it, explaining that it was just that important. Han Jae-woo looked around at the equipment in the man's home and asked what kind of game this even was. The man, confused, asked if Han hadn't heard of Guardian of Humanity. Han Jae-woo shot back, asking what kind of shut-in loser played something with that name. The man grew animated and explained that Guardian of Humanity was a vast world with total freedom, filled with anime-style heroines and globally acclaimed character design. Spreading his arms wide as if to embrace the universe, the man exclaimed that it had over 1 billion players and that top players could easily earn tens of millions of won. He added that the quest he was heading out to complete today was exactly one of those. Han Jae-woo could hardly believe it and asked if he meant that people were actually making millions from this. The man responded with giddy excitement. Yes, he insisted, that was exactly what he meant. Of course, the man leaned in excitedly and asked if Han Jae-woo wanted to try it. Han rubbed his chin, thinking. Then he refused the offer, saying that he's busy right now. He pulled out his phone and glanced at the screen. A message popped up. I'm canceling today's request. We've made up. Han thought to himself that it seemed he was free now. Streams of blue data surged around him as he logged into the game. The sky was a brilliant blue, dotted with white clouds. Han Jae-woo muttered to himself that he couldn't believe he was logging in on a whim. He stood in a medieval-style plaza, marveling aloud at how modern technology could make the sky look so real. The streets, the people, they all felt alive. He questioned whether this could truly be just a game. He stared, puzzled, at a burly fruit vendor by an apple stand. Everything was so vivid, he could even see the pores on the character's skin. It was unnervingly real. Suddenly, the vendor grabbed him by the collar, asking impatiently whether he intended to pay. Han panicked. The vendor waved him off angrily and told him to leave if he had no money. He had other customers to deal with. Han opened his system window and checked his funds. 10 florins. That must be the in-game currency, he figured. He decided he had better use it sparingly. Apologetically, he said he had no money. Just then, a young boy stared longingly at the apples, saying one looked delicious. His mother tugged him away, telling him it was time to go. The boy resisted, clearly disappointed. Han Jae-woo asked the vendor how much an apple cost. The vendor said it was just 1 florin. Han handed an apple to the boy and told him to go ahead and eat it. The boy gasped in delight. His mother thanked Han sincerely, saying it was a generous use of his precious coin. Han replied that it was nothing, it was just in-game currency, after all. The boy grinned and said the apple looked so tasty, thanking him again. But the mother knew 1 florin could buy a full meal here. The mother repeated her thanks. The boy waved goodbye, thanking him once more. Han smiled and told him to listen to his mom. Watching them walk away brought back memories of living alone with his own mother. He had been a brat, always begging her for fried chicken. A faint smile crept across his face. This game had real charm. When life piled on pressure, playing helped him feel better. He once helped an elderly woman in-game and received a system message. You've completed a quest. She thanked him, calling him a kind young man. So he started logging in more often, releasing his real-world stress inside the game. He'd return exhausted, after fighting dragons online and running from problems offline. The game recharged him so he could keep going. And just like that, 5 in-game years passed. Then a woman in armor approached and asked if he was the famous Han Jae-woo. With a toothpick in his mouth, Han gave her a puzzled look. She introduced herself as Valpurgis and said she'd heard he was strong. She asked if he could help with a wild boar problem in the Javier forest. Han repeated her words, wild boars? She asked if he was scared. Smiling, he replied that the timing was perfect. He asked if she was kidding. He'd just been thinking about roasted boar for dinner. Valpurgis said she hoped his skill matched his bragging. A massive wild boar fell to the ground, bleeding heavily. Valpurgis, amazed, exclaimed that it had only taken 1 blow and that she hadn't even had time to do anything. Laughing, she explained that he was so strong she never got the chance to intervene. She asked if he wanted to form a team. The system displayed a message. Nun Knight Valpurgis has sent you a party invitation. Han asked aloud if this was just another way to make him do someone else's chores. Valpurgis teased him, asking if he had some long-term trust issues. He laughed and admitted that maybe he did. Then she added that he was definitely entertaining. Valpurgis proposed that if he accepted the request, she would recommend him to become a knight of the Empire. He agreed immediately. Deal. Below the balcony, a crowd gathered and erupted into cheers. They chanted his name, Han Jae-woo. The elector asked him how he felt and said it must be exhilarating. Han smiled and replied that it didn't feel like an achievement he earned alone. He added that if Valpurgis hadn't spoken to him that day, he wouldn't be seeing this sight. Valpurgis objected and called that nonsense. She pointed to the crowd and said these were the people he had saved. This piece was his creation. A white dove flew by, feathers drifting down like snow. Images from the past flashed in memory. Back in the present, Valpurgis looked at Han Jae-woo with admiration and said sincerely that he was incredible. She admitted she hadn't lived long, but she had never met anyone so persistent. She asked him why. Han Jae-woo paused, face scarred, his cheeks still swollen. He smiled and answered that he just really loved this world. Valpurgis laughed and said she understood. He confessed that this was the first place where she ever thought the sky looked beautiful. Han Jae-woo said, aside from his aching face, everything was fine. Valpurgis asked why he had taken off his armor like that. Han replied helplessly that he didn't have much of a choice. She rode her horse and said she'd soon be returning to the monastery. She needed to inform them that he was alive. She promised she would repay him. There were so many things she was thankful for. Han stroked his chin and said he was looking forward to that. He wondered aloud with a Seuss look what a good reward might be. Valpurgis scolded him, calling him a pervert. They rode side by side down a forest path. Valpurgis said that actually, the reward wouldn't just come from her. The monastery would definitely honor him too. Han Jae-woo replied that was fine, but what he really wanted was her reward. Valpurgis threatened to punch him again. Night fell, and a grand monastery loomed ahead. Valpurga Monastery. Inside, Valpurgis demanded an explanation from Sister Angela. She said that Sir Valor was a guest of the monastery. But Sister Angela calmly replied that they had no choice. The monastery was under emergency protocol. For that reason, Sir Valor was not allowed to enter the inn near Linfelton. Han Jae-woo lay on a bed, sighing to himself. Things were getting complicated. He had planned to request the heart of the angel from the monastery, a sacred S-rank artifact passed down for generations. It held divine blessings and could restore a soul. Essentially, it granted an extra life. Lying on the bed, Han Jae-woo let out another sigh. Han Jae-woo thought to himself that he truly needed that relic to face what was coming next. A knock came from outside. It was Valpurgis's voice. She said it was her, Sir Valor. Han sat up, confused, and greeted her, addressing her as Lady Valpurgis. She entered the room, apologizing for making such an esteemed guest stay in such humble quarters. Han Jae-woo asked, puzzled, what she meant by that. Valpurgis looked at him and asked what he was doing. Han replied calmly that he was thinking. Valpurgis grew serious and explained that the situation was dire but also confidential. Han Jae-woo assured her that he was tight-lipped. Valpurgis nodded and said she believed him. She sat down, then solemnly declared that the abbess had become a sacrifice to darkness. Han replied with the same composure he was just thinking, but added that he had just spoken to Abbess Angela. That, he realized, could only mean one thing. There was a traitor among them. He paused, stunned by his own deduction. He asked again, seeking confirmation Margareta was the abbess. Then it had to be that bastard Pazimuth's doing. It was unbelievable. He thought that guy was dead. And Margareta, she was still alive? Han gripped his head in disbelief. His eyes were wide. Valpurgis called his name, trying to get his attention. He said he had assumed Margareta was dead and had never thought twice about it. Valpurgis, worried, said that he didn't look well. Margareta was the strongest woman in imperial history, a living symbol of power, capable of defeating even the ultimate demon king. She was the one who turned the Valpurga Monastery into a military order. They absolutely couldn't lose her. Han Jae-woo suddenly shot to his feet, startling Valpurgis. She asked what had gotten into him. Han, fired up, exclaimed that Valpurgis meant the abbess had been corrupted by darkness. Valpurgis confirmed that it was true. He said they had to move immediately. Han Jae-woo declared that he had deep knowledge of darkness. They made their way to the main headquarters of Valpurga Monastery. Rain poured down from a heavy sky. A nun asked skeptically if she really claimed to know about the dark. Valpurgis confirmed it and said that Sir Valor was someone who could be trusted. Slogans hung on the walls. Strong bodies bring unwavering faith. Another nun questioned why they didn't at least try to trust him. One of them called out to Deputy Abbess Angela. Angela stood with her arms crossed, eyes sharp. Valpurgis turned to Han Jae-woo with a grin and said it seemed like she had told him quite a lot already. Han thought the atmosphere here was way too tense. Suddenly, the nun struck her desk hard. Angela spoke firmly, reminding her that the incident was caused by a traitor, and yet Valpurgis proposed trusting an outsider? She snapped that there was nothing worth listening to anymore and told them to leave. She tried to argue, but Han cut her off. Han Jae-woo gave Valpurgis a subtle smile. Then he spoke up, saying he had heard the situation with the abbess was critical. Angela shot back that it wasn't an outsider's concern. Han asked her to just let him finish. Smiling confidently, He said it was up to them whether to believe him or not, but he had read the 7 sacred texts. Angela was shocked and asked if he meant the ones written by Saint Antonio himself. Han confirmed that he had, and said the books contained detailed records on the darkness. He explained that after the Dark Army came, the 7 sacred texts vanished, and with them, the final account of the struggle and the seal. Angela was speechless. She demanded to know how he knew all that. She pounded the table in frustration, saying that even speaking the name of that force could bring a curse. It wasn't something to talk about lightly. Han replied seriously, asking her to trust him. He claimed he knew the final method to resist the darkness. Angela hesitated. Han gave her another confident smile. She eventually relented, saying that in return, he must swear never to speak of this again. She warned him if he uttered a single word, she would smash him and bury his body in the Rhine River. He and Walpurgis were then surrounded by muscle-bound nuns, all radiating ominous intensity. Han Jae-woo stared, horrified, thinking these were muscle freaks one had just crushed a table with grip strength alone. And the smell, what was that stench of sweat? He thought he had never seen Margaretta's face, but judging by the rumors, she could probably bench and squat more than most athletes. Walpurgis asked, concerned, why Han looked so pale. Han stammered that he was fine. Then she asked, half joking, if that body type was his ideal. Han replied affirmatively no. Walpurgis said that that is a relief. Angela announced they had arrived. In front of them stood a massive door, surrounded by a miasma of purple fog. She warned that the corruption here was dense. Lose focus, and they could lose themselves. Han Jae-woo acknowledged that he understood. Angela instructed the other nuns to wait behind. They replied in unison. Yes, ma'am. Angela said she would enter, and pushed open the door shrouded in darkness. Han Jae-woo immediately felt a crushing pressure, an intense magical force. The system prompted. You are taking mental damage from the dark aura. He asked Walpurgis if she was okay. Walpurgis replied that the goddess would protect her, and then asked how he was. The system notified. Player has received mental protection against darkness. Han said with a smile that he thought he could still handle it. Angela stated that what they were seeing now was the abyss. Han looked ahead and gasped. This was the strongest warrior in history. This was the abbess of Walpurga Monastery. A stunning woman with silver-white hair lay motionless on a bed. Her eyes were closed, and her body was wrapped in the ominous purple aura. Her name Margareta. Han was stunned seeing the petite nun. He turned, asking in horror if they kidnapped the little girl. This was the woman said to bench press and squat like a beast. Angela spoke sternly, telling him to take this seriously. She said that unless they were truly desperate, they wouldn't have reached out to a mercenary like Han Jae-woo. They had tried everything. Nothing worked. She grabbed Han and pleaded, saying she would pay any price to save the abbess. System prompt. You have taken 50 damage. Han gasped and asked if she could let him go. He was suffocating. Angela immediately released him and apologized. Looking at Margareta on the bed, Han Jae-woo now saw with his own eyes her condition was truly dire. He explained that as a priest, her pain and rate of corruption were twice as fast as that of ordinary people. Han gently touched her forehead. The blackened veins on her neck were proof enough. Angela cried out in disbelief. Han reassured her that there was still hope. Angela, visibly shaken, asked what it was begging him to tell them. System prompt. You have taken 50 damage. Angela shoved Han away. He fixed his collar and replied calmly. The solution was simple. He proposed using the monastery's sacred relic, applying it to the abbess. Angela fell silent. Han's hand brushed Margareta's cheek. Angela asked if he meant the heart of the angel. Then she said she understood he planned to extract the curse from the abbess and transfer it into someone else. The curse could be sealed away, but divine power and corruption repelled each other. During the transfer, the abbess would almost certainly die. Han Jae-woo explained that this was why the heart of the angel was essential. Such a curse was lethal to all priests. No one in the monastery could survive it. But now, he said, there was him, a lowly mercenary. That made him the perfect vessel for the curse. He smiled with confidence and said that it was tempting, wasn't it? Sister Angela admitted that it was. However, she also stated that it wouldn't work. Abbess Margareta had left a message. This darkness is mine. No one else may bear it. If anyone does, The Empire will lose everything. Angela warned that this was a curse born of shadow, its origin and symptoms unknown. It was a mystery wrapped in darkness. She asked whether he truly believed he could survive it. This curse would haunt him for life. Valpurgis tried to reason with him, saying that Angela was right. There was no reason for him to get involved. Han gently reassured her. He said he would be fine. Then he turned to Angela and claimed that he was the ideal candidate. He understood the darkness from the Holy War. He was not a priest, so he wouldn't suffer the same effects. And, to be honest, he was a complete outsider, just someone who'd appeared today. He told her to admit it. He was the best choice. Angela hesitated. In her mind, she feared what the abbess might do to her if she ever regained consciousness. She imagined Margareta ripping her into pieces. Valpurgis called out to her. Angela finally relented. She told Han Jae-woo to do what he thought was right. The system explained that the heart of the angel restored the soul of its user after death. It was usually saved for the future, but this might be his only chance to bring Margareta back as an ally. Valpurgis asked one last time if he was sure. She reminded Han that there was still time to back out. Han interrupted calmly and addressed her. Valpurgis fell silent. Angela simply said that he was a man, let him handle it. Han Jae-woo declared that everything was ready. He said it was time to begin the ritual. Data streams flickered before his eyes as he began chanting. He pressed the hand bearing the ring to Margareta's forehead. His voice echoed with incantations. Black markings appeared on his face, and he gasped in agony as dark energy wrapped around him. Angela and Valpurgis were blasted back by the surge of corruption. Chaos swept the room. The flow of data vanished into space. Han found himself standing on a barren, alien world, a wasteland in the middle of a cosmic void. He wondered aloud whether this was the realm of darkness. Everything around him was pitch black. He couldn't even tell which way was forward. A voice rang out, claiming it was the one buried in tombs and demanding to know who dared summon it. Han shouted back his name. He was Valor and demanded that the curse on Margareta be broken. The voice mocked him, laughing at the mortal who couldn't even perceive its form. Han wondered if this was its final shape. The voice replied that he was not the one it wanted to meet. A flash of purple lightning cracked through the sky, and a colossal eye opened, roaring for him to disappear. A wave of force struck Han. System prompt. Your soul is protected. The eye was surprised. It exclaimed that he was immune to soul extraction. Han roared back, ordering the creature to break the curse and place it on him instead. The voice snarled for silence. It threatened to shred the soul of every person around him unless he revealed his identity. Han thought bitterly that it was trying to use hostages. Fine, he decided it was time to use some tricks of his own. He shouted that he had read the 7 sacred texts. The eye flinched, asking what he just said. Han explained that he had made a deal with the entity known as Struggle's Death and had exchanged one of its mongrel pets to get the texts. The eye cursed the foul beast and demanded more. Han continued, suggesting that by now, Struggle's Death was probably reselling those stolen relics to desperate freelancers. He opened his arms dramatically and warned that if they delayed any longer, he might even reveal the color of the voice's underwear. The eye hesitated, then relented. It agreed to his request. Han smiled triumphantly and said it had taken the bait. The eye added that it had a condition. Han welcomed that, saying it was exactly what he'd hoped for. System prompt. New quest available. Objective. Eliminate all demon lords sponsored by Struggle's Death. Quest list appeared. Rank 5, Lord of the Void Crack. Rank 7. Lord of Darkness and Sky Faza. Rank 14. Lord of Gluttony and Greed Hezemerk. Episode 17. Lord of Nightmares and Illusion Amur. Han thought to himself, perfect. He could feel them taking the bait already. Maybe a little sweet talk would go even further. He smiled and said that honestly, this might all be too much for poor little him to handle. The eye sneered, calling him a pitiful worm. But it added, if he could catch it, he could keep it. A massive burst of energy blasted into Han Jae-woo. This was the power of darkness. He screamed in agony, feeling his body torn by its force. He shouted in pain, demanding to know if the eye was trying to kill him. This wasn't part of the deal. The eye replied coldly that nothing came for free. That kind of power required equal payment. Han Jae-woo screamed again, body writhing. System window appeared. New class acquired. One without blood or tears primary stat boost. Health and mana increased. New attribute unlocked. Darkness new S rank skill acquired. Summon undead. Status. You have died. Han Jae-woo jolted awake in bed, gasping for air. He looked at the ring on his hand and muttered that it seemed, yes, he had been revived. Then he burst into manic laughter, his expression twisted with exhilaration. He thought to himself, Necromancer King. Commander of undead liches. Even ancient dragons. He had become the one without blood or tears, the first among 10 billion players in Guardian of Humanity. The whole world would be watching him now. Valpurgis, tears in her eyes, asked if he had hit his head. Han hurried to reassure her. He insisted that it wasn't what she thought, calling her Lady Valpurgis. She explained that after the ritual, he lost consciousness. She had brought him to her room to rest for a while. Han Jae-woo thanked her with genuine gratitude. Sitting by his bedside, Valpurgis spoke sternly. She told him never to do anything so reckless again. He had no idea how worried she had been. Han looked at her, reached out, and gently placed his hand on her knee. He spoke softly and promised her he would never do anything like that again. Han Jae-woo solemnly promised he wouldn't do anything reckless again. Valpurgis's cheeks flushed, and Han lowered his head shyly. He asserted, his voice soft and slightly nervous, that it was a promise. The two of them fell into a quiet silence, both gazing out the window together. Suddenly, a thunderous noise shattered the peaceful moment. Han Jae-woo asked in a panic if they were under attack. Valpurgis assured him it wasn't what it looked like. The two rushed out of the room and found the nuns gathered outside. Han asked what was going on. Sister Angela greeted him, relieved to see him awake. In front of them stretched a clearing, the trees chopped down. Han asked if Lord Pazimuth had come to cut down trees. A massive shadow fell over them. Han crossed his arms and scowled as Margareta cheerfully called out to him, saying she was glad he was awake. Han stared at her in confusion, asking what was going on. Margareta explained that he had been lying there for too long, and she was just warming up. She called him her savior with a big grin. A towering figure loomed over them. Margareta introduced herself again, proudly declaring that she was the abbess of Valpurga Monastery before throwing a giant uprooted tree to the ground with one hand. She shouted Han's name with enthusiasm and told him to just call her Mari. Descending the spiral staircase with Margareta and Valpurgis, Han thought about how he had finally gained the highest rank of the deathless tree. One without blood or tears. He admitted to himself that he originally intended to use that power to quietly assassinate Philip. But since Philip was an elector and Han didn't have the heart of the angel, his chances were slim. He knew he couldn't afford to drop his guard. Margareta whooped with excitement, shouting that it was time for an adventure. Sister Angela sighed, asking Margareta to maintain some dignity. Margareta snapped back that dignity was the true evil of high society. Angela sighed again, muttering that Margareta never let her win an argument. Han quietly asked Valpurgis if Margareta was always like this. The latter confirmed that that is the case. Margareta glanced at them while Han whispered to Valpurgis that the strongest member of the sisterhood and eldest member is this little kid. Margareta overheard and teased them, asking if they were flirting behind her back. Valpurgis stammered her name in embarrassment, while Han chuckled and asked if it really looked that way. Margareta changed the topic, saying they had arrived at the underground vault of Valpurga Monastery. She explained that everything inside was cursed magical relics that even the monastery dared not touch, but for someone like Han, they were perfect. Han responded that he understood and thanked her for bringing him to a place like this. Margareta laughed it off, grabbing his hand and saying that she would love to take him on a date. She suddenly tensed up and pretended to be scared as Angela grabbed her by her head, speaking in a childish tone that she wouldn't tell anyone because someone might get super mad. Regardless, she shouted, they should hurry inside. She was too excited to wait. She dashed into the vault. Valpurgis answered simply, yes. Han thought to himself that this whole situation was chaotic. The vault door creaked open, light spilling out in dazzling beams. Han smiled confidently. So far, everything was going according to plan. One more step, and the hunt for Philip would begin. Outside the window, horses neighed in the woods. Han stood there, showing off his new equipment. He boasted that it looked amazing. System prompt. Cursed Air S rank nullifies curses below item level. Equipment skill. Shadow Burst. With this gear, he said, no one would be able to surpass him. He held the magical dagger Kaka's blade, an A-rank relic that enhanced necromancy. Han patted the horse's neck and called Valpurgis over. Valpurgis stood under the tree and remarked that disappearing without saying goodbye was a little cold. He suggested they take one last walk. As they strolled along a forest path, Valpurgis said that although they hadn't known each other long, it felt like they had been friends for years. Han asked if she really meant that. Valpurgis explained that it was probably because Han had done so much for her fighting the orc armies, defeating Huru. She said Han was cool and reliable. Han replied that Valpurgis had helped a lot too. Valpurgis thanked him, saying it meant a lot. Han remained quiet. Valpurgis lowered her head again, shyly. Then she asked if Han wasn't even a little curious. Han asked what she meant. Valpurgis told him not to play dumb. She was referring to her face under the helmet. Han said he figured there was a reason, so he hadn't asked. Valpurgis admitted that under the helmet was a large scar, the mark of a curse. Her uncle had worked hard to keep it a secret, saying she must never try to uncover the truth. Han nodded. He understood. Valpurgis explained that despite decades of effort, people still called her the Ugly Knight. That nickname came from those who didn't know her story. Then Valpurgis asked if Han would like to see her face. She admitted she was nervous, but felt that if it were Han, she could show her true self. Valpurgis removed her helmet. Her face was beautiful. She asked nervously what Han thought. Was she ugly? She lowered her head again, embarrassed. Han covered his mouth in shock. Valpurgis asked him to say something, anything. Han stammered, apologizing, then managed to say that he was just overwhelmed. He told Valpurgis that she was truly beautiful. Valpurgis breathed a sigh of relief. Watching her shyly cover her face, he thought that there is no way Valpurgis has actually removed her helmet. He has seen her in every chapter and she has never shown this side of herself. She told him awkwardly that there is something she wanted to give him. When asked what that is, she presented a necklace, saying that it's a treasure from the House of Bayern, passed down by her uncle. He asked why she would give something so precious to him, to which she replied that it's a token that means they'll always be together. He stared at the necklace with a blush on his face. He repeated her words, clearly overwhelmed, then he promised to treasure it. She did the same as she promised as well. Laughing awkwardly, he turned and said that he should take his leave now. She shouted, her face completely red, wishing him good luck. He told her that she could go first like a gentleman, but she said the same. They kept insisting on who should go first, causing even the horse to get annoyed with their lovey-dovey act. System prompt. Hidden story unlocked: the truth of the Ugly Knight. Valpurgis's romance route has been unlocked. Night settled over the forest. An eerie laugh echoed through the trees. Han laughed to himself, thinking that at this rate they may end up marrying soon. Suddenly, a foul stench caught his nose. Looking around, he sees dead bodies of soldiers. He deduced that Philip and Pazamuth's armies must have fought here. And judging by the damage, it wasn't long ago. He spurred his horse, thinking that he'd better sweep the area. He gets a notification that a new skill has been unlocked via the magic dagger of the monster Karka. He grins and thinks that this is getting interesting. He raises the dagger and activates the skill. He starts chanting, eventually summoning a horde of vampires. He orders, saying that their first mission is to scout the area and track down Philip. They acknowledge his order in unison. He pointed at a specific vampire and ordered him to collect all scattered military uniforms around here, saying that they'll come in handy. Han Jae-woo thought, now, it's time to confront Philip. The scene shifts to Philip with his squad. He curses inwardly, from being the Elector of Steel to being reduced to this mess. A guard tells him that this is an emergency, but Philip just snatched the bag food from his hand and started gorging down food without care. Just then, a shout reached their ears. Someone was calling for Philip, saying that he's coming to help. It's of course our boy. Philip's expression brightened. He replied that he remembers Sir Valor. A guard tried to caution him to be on guard and observe the situation first. But Philip, furious, just slapped him hard and told him to shut up. Philip raged, saying that when Valor came to rescue him, what had they been doing? He cursed them as pathetic, filthy parasites. Philip declared that when this was over, they would all become lackeys of that mercenary. He then charged forward, shouting for valor, announcing his presence. Han Jae-woo stood surrounded by flying shadows. Philip reached out and thanked him. He even said he'd brought reinforcements. With them, he said, they were safe. He said only Han Jae-woo could be trusted. He promised generous rewards. Han replied coldly that he didn't need any. In an instant, the guards around Philip were taken down. Philip stared in horror as Han Jae-woo grinned and told him he no longer needed him. Standing among the wreckage, Philip scoffed and said Han was like a mangy dog that didn't fear tigers. He stared at Han and said that he had raised a dog and it turned out to be a mutt. Han laughed and replied proudly that yes, he was a filthy mutt. He barked twice and said he'd bite someone like Philip to death. A flash of anger passed through Philip's eyes. He drew his sword. First stance. Heart sever slash. The blade sliced clean through one of Han's puppets. Han thought to himself that it was just a doll. Sending puppets to fight was pointless, it only wasted mana. He told the minions behind him to retreat. They obeyed in unison. Philip mocked him, saying it must be humiliating to see his minions die in front of him. Han replied that unlike some people, he wasn't the type to care about pawns. As he spoke, blue energy began to swirl in his hand. He launched into the air like a blade, declaring that his heart was as vast as an endless plain. Philip leapt up in response, dodging Han Jae-woo's strike. The two locked eyes mid-air, each wearing a confident smile. Philip smashed into the ground with force, shattering it beneath his feet. He followed up with another sword slash, sending 10 blades flying through the air. Han Jae-woo blocked the assault and thought to himself, so this was the strength of the Steel Elector. How ironic. It was once the very sword style he cherished. It looked graceful on the surface, elegant even, but behind that beauty lay a deadly counter. A master of retaliation. That was Philip. The Steel Elector. Philip landed on the ground and pointed his sword at Han. He asks if he thinks he can survive after betraying him. Han Jae-woo replies casually, saying that he's pretty close with the sisters of the monastery. Philip scoffs at him backing, saying that he's not scared of some militant religious order. He then jumped into the air and unleashed his Moonshadow sword-style second form, 3 harmonies. Bit to his shock, Han casually blocked it with his dagger. No matter how much force Philip put in the dagger wouldn't budge. He freaks out, blaming his internal injuries. Han shouts that this sappy drama ends now and kicks Philip hard in the stomach. He coughs up blood as he's sent flying backwards. Han declares that it's not the monastery he should be afraid of, it's him. Philip fell to his knees, groaning that if his body were in better condition, he could have won. He then demanded to know why Han wanted to kill him. He claimed to have admired Han's talent, even granted him favor shouldn't Han be loyal. Han Jae-woo asked if Philip truly didn't understand where he went wrong. Fine, he said he would spell it out. First, Philip had ignored everything Han had warned him about and was betrayed for it. Second, he had heartlessly abandoned Valpurgis, who had worked tirelessly for him. Third, Han asked how many people had died because of Philip's incompetence. And yet, he still called himself an elector. Philip pleaded with him to think it over. He claimed everything he did was for the people. He asked, if he died, who would protect and feed them? His absence, he said, would only bring joy to the other electors, who would seize the opportunity to devour the empire. Han Jae-woo admitted that he made a fair point. Then he said he would give Philip one chance. He pulled out a vial, a full recovery potion. He said that if Philip accepted his terms, he would let him use it. Philip, overwhelmed, asked what Han wanted. He promised to agree to anything. Han asked if he was serious. Then he laid out the condition. Philip would have to kneel before Valpurgis and beg for forgiveness with both hands and knees on the ground. Philip asked if Valpurgis was still alive. Then, as a gesture of apology, he offered to donate 10,000 florins to the Bayern family. Han replied that was great. Philip sounded energetic. He might even deserve the whole bottle. Philip took the potion, thanked him, and downed it in one gulp. The bottle shattered in his hand. Han Jae-woo asked how it tasted. Philip began coughing up a thick, purple fluid. Han Jae-woo said casually that it was the venom of the poison dragon Fukuma. Philip cried out in agony, cursing Han and accusing him of mocking him. Han replied with a bright smile that it's a toxin strong enough to kill even demon lords. He had acquired it from Hejaz. Han Jae-woo laughed and confirmed it. Enraged, Philip tried to drive a dagger through Han's chest, shouting that he'll die for this. But just then, a shadow lunged from behind Han Jae-woo. He swung his blade and severed Philip's arm. Blood splattered through the air. Philip stared in horror. He asked in disbelief, was it really Pippenheim? Pippenheim replied that yes, it was him. He confirmed that he had been left to die that day, devoured by the zombie hounds. But Valor Han Jae-woo had given him a second life. Now, he said, he served Lord Valor, not Philip. He explained that Philip's arrogance had always dragged everyone around him into danger. Now it was time for him to pay the price. Pippenheim raised his sword and said Philip would pay with his life. Philip, tears in his eyes, stared at him in terror. System prompt. Warning: do you permit Pippenheim to kill the Guardian? System window. Killing Philip will impact the game progression. Han Jae-woo thought to himself. There was such a thing. Pippenheim asked for confirmation. Did Han really give permission? Han replied with certainty, of course. Pippenheim thanked him and swung the blade. System warning in red. Guardian Philip has been slain. Hidden quest completed. Defeat Philip. He unlocked another hidden quest, which requires him to kill all Guardians in order to gain a transcendent class. Another prompt alerted him that due to his interference with the world's will, the game difficulty has increased. He laughed and added that she couldn't have predicted this. High above, in space, Aquila floated with an amused look. He commented that Han had broken the seal. She called him a naughty little Valor and remarked on the pride on Han's face. Holding something in her hand, she said, "Come on, show me what else you've got." Then she left, smirking, and added that this was only the beginning. Han Jae-woo examined the cascade of system notifications flooding his vision. He noted he had obtained the skills: Lunar Shadow Sword Art S rank, Princess and Coral A rank, Empire Agitation SS rank, Mephistopheles' Acting SS rank, and Dignity of the Great Leader SS rank. A subsequent notification revealed he had also acquired Blood Tear Absorption S rank. He marveled at the rewards, thinking to himself that as expected from someone at the level of an elector, the rewards were exceptionally generous. 3 SS rank skills, 2 S rank, and 1 A rank, alongside 2 class exclusive S rank skills as a level up reward. It was perfect. His attention shifted to another dropped item resembling an ordinary magic zipper. He attempted to access or inspect it more closely but encountered an immediate system barrier blocking him. A notification flashed. You have been blocked by a barrier. He noted mentally that he would need to ask Margareta to unlock it later. Another significant notification appeared. You have obtained the essence of the Guardian. Collecting 5 will allow you to ascend into a transcendent being. However, it carried a grave warning. However, every time a Guardian is killed, the seal that protects the world from darkness weakens. Han Jae-woo contemplated this revelation, understanding it meant he must be very careful. A somber reflection followed. Would becoming a transcendent being mean eternal solitude? Would he remain with other Guardians or forge a different path altogether? Pippenheim approached, holding out an item. He reported that just as Han Jae-woo had said, they had examined the remnants left by Philip's men and found it. Han Jae-woo's eyes gleamed as he examined the item, exclaiming that this must be the main reward of the quest, noting that the gleam alone was on another level. He commended Pippenheim's work. He then inquired about the side mission he had given Pippenheim, disguising one of Philip's captured soldiers in the clothes of the Pessimist faction to resemble a demon. Pippenheim confirmed that as instructed, they had dressed one of Philip's men perfectly as a Pessimist demon. Han Jae-woo approved, noting the disguise looked great. His attention shifted to another captured survivor from Philip's forces, a man trembling and begging for mercy, promising to do anything if allowed to live. Pippenheim asked Han Jae-woo what they should do with this prisoner, one of Philip's underlings who had been hiding. Han Jae-woo smiled coldly, thinking to himself that he really hoped the recipient would like the gift he had given them. Meanwhile, Sir Lawrence and his troops surveyed the battlefield where Philip's forces had clashed with the Pessimist faction. A soldier pointed out the signs of combat, which Lawrence gravely acknowledged. Another soldier announced finding a survivor, Han's disguised operative. Lawrence ordered his men to handle the survivor with care, stating they would need to question him. Lawrence pressed the operative for information, summarizing what the man had reported, after being surrounded by Pessimist forces, in the desperation to save Prince Philip. Lawrence then accused the operative, asking if he was saying that while his comrades were dying, he hid alone. The operative vehemently denied this, insisting that he had risked his life to protect his commander, Philip. He elaborated on the desperate fight. Moved by this fabricated tale of selfless loyalty, Lawrence declared to all troops present that this man here had risked his life to protect his commander. Though they had lost the item, the spirit of knighthood remained unbroken. He proclaimed the operative a model knight whose example they should all follow. He then commanded them to search for Prince Philip throughout the night, invoking the name of the Rose Palace. Later, at the Rosarant Rose Palace, Lawrence reported to his lord. Kneeling, he stated that as ordered, they pursued the Pessimist forces and found traces of Philip, but the prince had already escaped and his exact whereabouts were unknown. When his lord asked about that item, Lawrence hesitated. The disguised operative claiming he was sure Prince Philip was the one holding it, but the Pessimist bastards took it. Lawrence confirmed this report. His lord expressed deep frustration, stating that the name Pessimist was becoming awfully tiresome. Lawrence bowed deeply before his lord, voice trembling as he apologized profusely and begged for punishment. The lord waved it off, her expression grave as he declared the retrieval of that item paramount, the only means to restore Prince Philip as elector. She dismissed concerns about Philip's fate, insisting the prince wouldn't die easily. Her command was clear. Lawrence was to go directly to the Pessimist base and deliver a message demanding they surrender the item immediately. She added ominously that refusal wouldn't be pleasant for them. This lord is Roland, Rose's demon king. At the Pessimist base, panic erupted. Demons trembled in terror, shouting that the crazy woman, Margareta, had been re-elected. Pessimist, eyes wide with disbelief, screamed that it was impossible, that monstrous wench was back. He pounded a table, ranting that his trap had been perfect, demanding how a mere human could survive. Another demon, pale with dread, retorted that he simply didn't understand the magnitude of what Margareta represented. Isn't she just a human? The boss, voice low with fearful recollection, reminded the others they hadn't forgotten her legend. He recounted how Margareta had once stormed the domain of the demon king Alf alone, slaughtering every single one of his subordinates. The catalyst, one of Alf's underlings, had carelessly stepped snacks. Since that day, he explained, the demon kings referred to her with a title spoken in hushed terror, Margareta, the Storm and Annihilation. A messenger rushed in, announcing the arrival of a formal demand from King Roland. The Pessimist leader exchanged uneasy glances. He asked what is it now, and the messenger trembled and said he had no idea. Trembling, Pessimist muttered in exasperation, wondering what tantrum Roland would throw now. After reading the letter he muttered, that crazy woman, in disbelief, veins bulging on his forehead, slammed his fist down and roared, why does she think I have that item? When asked, he revealed Roland was demanding they hand over that thing, leaving the Pessimist commander baffled and curious. He thought, why would Roland think they possessed it? They hadn't even come close to securing it during the chaos of chasing Philip. In fact, they lamented the loss of their own commander, Hejaz, during that pursuit. Then there is the resurrection of Margareta and the sudden disappearance of the item itself. This series of events back-to-back is extremely suspicious, with everything having an end result but the cause remaining frustratingly vague and obscured. Then it hit him, could there be a mastermind behind all this? Meanwhile, Han Jaewu sneezed abruptly. Pippenheim, standing nearby, asked with concern if his lord was feeling sick. Han dismissed it casually, saying his nose had just felt ticklish. Pippenheim then inquired about their plans for Philip's corpse. Han's response was cold and pragmatic. He intended to use it later as an undead servant. Pippenheim remarked that such a fate seemed fitting for a fallen elector and expressed anticipation. Han shifted focus, declaring the truly critical acquisition was the Golden Imperial Edict he now held. He examined the document carefully, a formal parchment stamped with the Empire's unmistakable golden seal. He recognized it as the ultimate proof of an elector's authority. A faint, satisfied smile touched his lips as he reflected on possessing both Philip's corpse and this powerful edict. With that in mind, Han's whole body started shaking, He kept calling to Pippenheim, then shouted in excitement that the whole world was now his. The document itself was substantial, a 31-page agreement meticulously outlining the electors' exclusive rights and procedures for appointing the next emperor of the realm. Its weight in his hands felt like the weight of destiny shifting. A group of merchants celebrated boisterously in their caravan. One slapped the guild leader's back, exclaiming that he'd earned a fortune again. The guild leader nodded grimly, stating that with the imperial economic blockade order in effect, this was their final opportunity to profit. He declared they must extract every possible coin before returning. Another merchant grinned, suggesting they drink until unconscious once back, while a third claimed to know the perfect tavern. Just then an arrow hit the merchant leader in the back of his head. Suddenly, bandits swarmed the caravan. Their leader bellowed orders to loot everything and leave nothing behind. Merchants scrambled in panic, screaming about being under attack and fumbling for weapons. The bandit leader emerged from the shadows, his voice cold as steel. He observed that the merchants had clearly profited handsomely, likely from trading with Roland during the blockade. The merchant confronted the bandit leader directly, demanding what he thought he was doing. He challenged him, asking if he even understood the destination of this money. The bandit attacked, sending the merchant crashing into a tree. The bandit leader squares his shoulders before the cowering merchants and says that if they have a problem they should go cry to Valpurgis. He bares his teeth and adds that they should bring their uncle too. Later, inside the monastery room, Han Jae-woo lies bruised while the blonde Valpurgis leans over him with bandages. He pants that as she presses his wounds, and she tells him that he must stay still. He flinches and says that it hurts. Valpurgis, and she tells him to endure it. Studying the bruises, she asks where he even got hurt this badly. The door slams open and the nun Margareta rushes in. She shouts that Han Jae-woo is back. Han Jae-woo and Valpurgis both fall silent, saying nothing, while Margareta also falters into silence. A beat later, she shouted that Valpurgis has removed her helmet. She startles and yelps. Margareta, catching her breath, says that Valpurgis will give an old lady like her a heart attack at this rate. Valpurgis lowers her head and says that she is sorry, Margareta. Margareta softens and says that she understands that feeling of not wanting to hide one's true self, and she asks if that is not how a woman's heart is. Valpurgis laughs weakly. Han Jae-woo turns, and Margareta tells him to take good care of Valpurgis. A cold threat follows from Margareta. She says that if he ever makes Valpurgis shed even a single tear, Han Jae-woo asks what if he does. Margareta says that she will fold him in half. He stiffens and says that yes, ma'am. Margareta then changes the subject and asks about Philip, saying that he said Philip is dead. Han Jae-woo answers that yes, and he says that the corpse is currently in the custody of his. He corrects himself and says that his friends are taking care of it. Valpurgis clicks her tongue and says that so he is really dead, and she asks if this will become a problem. Her eyes harden and she adds that she really wanted to be the one to finish him off. Han Jae-woo blinks and calls her Mar. She then shrugs and says that either way, Philip is dead, so that is good enough. He thinks inwardly that it's probably better that he dies in his hands. He brightens and says, come to think of it, he has a present for her. She leans forward and asks what it is. He hauls in bulging sacks and says that it is what he gathered from the remnants of Philip's gang. She claps her hands and exclaims in awe. He grins and says that with this she can buy any snack she wants. She startles and stammers, asking what he just said. Still dazzled by the gold, she peers up and asks Han Jae-woo if he is some kind of saint of compassion or something. He eyes her snack-fixated look and asks if Angela starves her regularly or what. She blushes and says that suddenly he is looking kind of handsome. He waves it off and asks her to stop. Valpurgis then notices a stacked bundle and says him, and she asks him what those bundles of paper are, adding that they look like letters. Han Jae-woo spreads them out and says that they are letters exchanged between Philip and Roland. He says that it seems like Roland was trying to make Philip emperor. He adds that the current emperor's relationship with Roland is bad because of tax issues. Margareta nods and says that that is right, just like the current economic blockade order. Han Jae-woo asks about an economic blockade order, and Margareta reacts in surprise and asks if he did not know. She explains that the emperor is currently seizing goods from all merchant guilds tied to Roland, and she says that because of that the nearby night houses are going absolutely berserk. She continues that that is why House Ritter attacked the Linny Merchant Guild. Han Jae-woo reacts with a puzzled sound. Margareta, half teasing, adds that thanks to that, their poor Valpurgis is going through so much mental stress. Valpurgis jolts and Margareta says oh right. Han Jae-woo studies her expression and asks if something is the matter. She fidgets with the papers and says that, well, actually. Valpurgis steadies her and says that it is okay. She lifts her chin and says that she will explain it. Night air slips through a window with a faint sigh. Alone, Han Jae-woo thinks that this has become such a tangled mess and that to think the Emperor's economic blockade would escalate into a big clash with the Elector of Bayern. A knock comes and a familiar voice at the door says that it is her. He looks up and answers that it is Valpurgis. The door opens on a tea tray and simple sweets. She steps in and says his name, Han Jae-woo, and she asks him to forget everything he heard today. Valpurgis sits with her hands folded and says that this originally had nothing to do with him. Han Jae-woo raises a hand to his chest and says that he cannot do that, and he adds that if it is something involving Valpurgis, he wants to help. She lowers her eyes and says softly that thank you. She then looks up again and says that the situation has grown too big, and she adds that if she receives help from him on this matter too, she will feel too guilty. Han Jae-woo studies her in silence and thinks that he knows Valpurgis is reliable, but he also thinks that she still lacks experience and that her heart is still too soft. He tightens his fingers around her hand and thinks that so that is why, and he calls her name, saying that Valpurgis. He turns his head and says that indeed, this is far too big a matter for a mercenary like him. Valpurgis nods and says that that is right, and she begins to say that so this time, he cut her off to add that still. He leans forward and says that he wants to help. In his mind he declares that he wants to be her strength. He smiles and taps his own chest and says that mercenaries can still be useful in their own ways. Valpurgis lets out a small laugh and says that he is making jokes even at a time like this, and she adds a shy ha-ha. He shows a faint grin and says that nope, and then he straightens with a confident glint and says that he is pretty confident. Valpurgis's cheeks warm as she repeats in a small voice that confident. Morning light spills across the cathedral spires, and Han Jae-woo, now back in his uniform, strides through the cloistered corridors at a quick clip. Nuns turn their heads as he passes. He pushes into a side hall, pivots, and dashes for a library door, his boots skidding on polished stone. He throws the door wide and shouts that Mar. Inside, Margareta sits on a couch with both hands full of pastries. She blinks up and says Valor. Han Jae-woo lifts a glittering pouch and says that this is the magic zipper Philip had, and he adds that there are countless gold coins inside it. He tilts the pouch so the light flashes and asks if she is not curious. Margareta's eyes brighten and her cheeks puff as she chews. He swings the pouch once more and says that if she opens it now, the reward doubles. He leans in with a teasing smile and asks if she wants a taste of it. Margareta bolts upright, throws a fist toward the ceiling, and exclaims T triples. He tips the burlap sack and lets a river of coins spill across the table, and the priestess squeals that the money is real as the light flashes over her eyes. He says that the pouch works like a storage magic he just opened, and he adds that from now on he can take things out with a flick of the hand. He lifts the hovering bag and says that it is like this, easy. Later, on horseback under clear sky, he raises the waterskin and says that he has never seen a convenience like that before. He adds with a grin that conveniences are always welcome, then takes too deep a pull and coughs as liquid sprays from his mouth. His mount snorts and slows. From the road ahead, crowds gather in clusters beneath pennants and balloons. A banner stretches between poles, and a loud voice on the wind says, "Welcome to the great city of Polzin." He blinks and says that, "Huh, what the hell," and then laughs that he finally made it in. He adds that the line felt like waiting 3 hours at Disneyland. He looks around and says that the place is just how he remembers it. Vendors shout. Streamers rattle. Beside him, townsfolk chatter to one another that the city is bustling because of the Great One. Polzin is a city where many different races live together. The Great One. They are all praising as Cobalt. Cobalt played a big role in improving relations between humans and other races and became widely known thanks to his eloquence, and another voice adds that he even convinced people in human-dominant districts to open their doors. He narrows his eyes and says that the man has had an important role within this city. He adds that he did not come merely to sightsee. A goblin with olive skin and white hair trots up with both arms flung wide and says hello. The goblin asks if he is here by invitation and introduces himself as an ambassador. The rider glances down and asks if the goblin knows him. The goblin laughs that, nope, but his aura is too strong to ignore. Blue letters ripple in front of his eyes, his revelation skill activates, and he says that it is a revelation again. He nods and says that this confirmation is enough for now and that he came to see Cobalt. The goblin brightens and says that, oh, His Esteemed Excellence remembers. He adds that it is rare for two big shots to be drawn together and that he actually has business with him as well, so he will guide him there. The scene cuts to a gray castle thrust up on rock. Inside the reception hall, the goblin gestures toward a sofa and says that he should please wait here. Tea will be served shortly. He answers that all right. A crystalline chime dings and a floating notice flickers. He skims it, then mutters that he expected as much. He watches steam curl from the teacups as the goblin fusses with a tray. And when the small talk meanders, he thinks again that the crowds outside call their benefactor the Great One. Yet this host keeps dropping hints that only an insider would use. When the chatter turns syrupy, our relationship is so loving, the goblin says. He thinks that again. He folds his arms and says that flattery alone is not enough to earn his trust. The goblin's smile tightens. He leans back and says that the acting is quite impressive, and he notes aloud that the something the goblin flaunted earlier was exactly the sort of trinket the late Earl treasured. He adds that claiming to have obtained it so easily was remarkable in the wrong way and that the invitation to meet someone unknown was suspicious as well. Above all, he says, one does not refer to oneself as the Great One. Smoke surges from the goblin's sleeves as if an invisible wick has been lit. The little body blurs. The grin stretches and dissolves. As the haze thins, a tall, white-haired man in a dark formal uniform sits where the goblin stood, a monocle gleaming in the window light. He says that the guess is correct and addresses him by name. Valorteld Valor. He adds calmly that he is the ruler of Polzin, Cobalt. A caption scrawls beneath his profile, the shadowy king, Cobalt, Demon King. He sets the cup down and says that Valor probably came to see him regarding the case involving Valpurgis, right? Valor answers yes. He adds that he thought Cobalt might have a clue or some useful information. Cobalt turns the teapot and a red signet on his finger glints as the stream of amber tea curls into the cup. He smiles slightly and says that he does, in fact, know what Valor wants to know. He folds his fingers beneath his chin and says that there is a condition. Valor thinks that he figured as much and then says that it is a condition, huh? He thinks that this man is obsessed with knowledge, he would even pay for information on the Emperor's underwear. Valor thinks he knows all the juicy info, from scandals to things like real estate speculation, and then, grinning, he thinks that he should just name it because he knows everything. The ruler chuckles softly. He raises a glowing fist and says that his condition is simple, be his friend. Valor answers with a shout that all right. A beat later he blinks and says huh. The ruler says that Valor may not realize it, but he is about to become the center of attention. From the latest Hexa's subjugation, to the strict paladin watching him, to rumors about her being close to him. He adds that if he connects with someone like Valor, it will be very profitable. Valor nods and says that he sees, then wonders aloud how he is supposed to show that they are friends. The ruler lifts two fingers and says to take this, conjuring a ring of light. He says that, as he can see, it is a communication ring, and he tells him to keep wearing that ring while he is here. Valor thinks, what is this guy up to? He studies the other man and thinks that he seems like the type who would lecture someone while smiling and telling them they should have studied harder. Valor mutters that he forgot, then thinks that he cannot read him at all. The ruler settles his teacup and says that next is a topic of great importance, a piece of information he might want. Then he snaps his fingers and says oh, he has one. Valor asks what it is. The ruler tilts his head and says that the clue is in the capital of the Duchy of Saxon. Then he names the place. Dresden. Stone spires and orderly avenues appear, labeled as the electorate of Saxon's capital, Dresden. At the great gate, guards level their halberds and shout, asking who he is. Blue panels flash as Valor's skill activates with a clear chime. The guards scream as shimmering force pushes them back. He says not to block his path, then streaks forward, skimming plate to plate as citizens scatter. He drops to a stop before a knot of people and says move, and the crowd parts in a rush. A brick facade rises ahead. Ryla Merchant Guild. From within, voices cry out, calling for the merchant guild leader. Inside, a bearded man jerks up from his seat and stammers, asking what the overwhelming presence rushing toward their guild is. Someone echoes, "Overwhelmed presence." A maid peeks from a doorway and gasps that he is almost here. The servant throws up her hands and shouts not to come any closer. Sunlight slants through the reception hall as a heavy-set man in fur trim trembles while he confronts Valor. He squints and asks why someone like him is coming here. Valor turns, cloak lifting, and says that he has come to make a deal, addressing the merchant guild leader. He rests one elbow on the sofa arm and asks Cobalt if he is referring to Dresden. Cobalt nods and says that is correct. He twirls the porcelain cup by its handle and says that the reason lies there, where the Velia Merchant Guild and the Ritter Knight family are bound by a massive debt. They are in a debtor-to-creditor relationship, he explains. Surprised, Valor thinks that he had no idea about this kind of information. As expected from Cobalt, the guy who had overwhelmed him in information warfare countless times before. Cobalt's network spans the continent, that's what makes him the Shadow King. Seeing that Valor is pleased with the information, Cobalt adds one more thing that we'll know later. Back in the guild hall, the leader rubs his brow and says that extraordinary phenomena began to manifest in his daughter, Arya. He adds with a heavy swallow that though she turns pale and red like this now, not long ago she was a bright, healthy child. He says that she laughed then. He lowers his voice and says that after that, one day, she just started to waste away, and eventually even lost strength to even lift a spoon. He says that is how they ended up in this situation. He invited every reputable doctor across the continent to no avail. He slumps down, holding his head, crying that at this rate, he will lose his daughter. Then he shouts that there has to be a way drowning our boy in his spit. He starts begging for Valor to help. Valor pushes him back and says that he came here to make a deal anyway. Valor clears his throat with a light cough and then kneels at a bedside and places the back of his hand against the girl's forehead. He says that her somatic response is weak, that she is sustaining a low body temperature that does not match the room, and that her breathing is irregular with an abnormal rhythm. He says that it cannot be treated with ordinary medicine, but he adds that there is a way. The guild leader reels back and shouts to know what on earth it is. Valor says the name Grossglockner and adds that they need the elixir from that place. The merchant's hands tremble on the ledger edge and he whispers that this is bad. He paces 2 steps and says that it is practically impossible to get. He says that only a handful of people have even seen the stuff from Grossglockner. He explains that the mountain is a massive death magic site buried in secrecy, located in the southern part of the empire, and he says that it is the territory of the demonic dragon, Schwarz Teufel. The creature is regarded as one of the mightiest dragons in the empire, and he says that its power is immeasurable. He adds that even demon kings cannot easily contend with him. The canyon the dragon rules crawls with countless demon beasts. Simply put, it is a deadly place and a hopeless challenge for the average person. Valor's mouth tilts. He thinks that that is for average people, then places a steady hand on the man's shoulder and says not to worry. He says that he will go. The merchant's eyes glisten as if lit from within, and he nods over and over, relief breaking across his face like sunlight in winter. A soft chime pulses across his vision as a blue pane pops up. He notes that it says his acting skill has been activated and that it will help him deceive and mock his opponent. He draws a breath to speak, but the merchant leader suddenly crushes him in a hug. The man begs that, if someone must go, he should be the one to risk it. Valor pries at his arms and says that no. They stand by the bedside where the small girl lies wan and sweating. Valor studies her and says that what can stabilize her right now is not medication. He says that it is the heartfelt love of her father. The merchant leader jerks, tears springing as he clutches his head and sputters that he understands, then asks what he can do to help. Valor lifts 2 fingers and says to hold that thought. He adds that the situation is complicated and says that he has heard the Ritter family owes a massive debt to the Ryla Merchant Guild. He asks if he could take that debt on himself. The merchant leader bolts upright with a shout and stammers what. Valor leans close and says that, for the one case, he is asking to shoulder the debt. The man looks from Valor to the child and rasps, "Daughter," and the girl stirs, whispering, "Dad." Images of her laughter tumble through the leader's mind, her bright smile among white blossoms, her childish vow that when she grows up she will marry him, until he chokes on a sob and says all right. Night wind swells. A crescent moon rides high as Valor heads out, cloak snapping. He clicks his tongue and says that it is a perfect night for camping. A sharp cry from the trees makes him look up, then he crouches at a patch of glowing plants and says that this one is a big one. He plucks a white star petal and holds it to his horse. He asks Phil if he knows what it is, then laughs that, well, fine. He knows the horse has not had dinner. He tells him to eat up. He pats the black mane and says to listen carefully. Thanks to a dual exorcism security barrier, neither evil humans nor demons can enter this ground. Another blue pane flickers. He notes the confirmation. He says that because the sacred field shrouds the entire canyon, the herbs within do not soak up the dragon's mana. He adds that outside this place the plants are brittle and warped, but inside they are soft and medicinal. In other words, he says that what one can gather here is pure treasure. He sweeps his hand through the growth. He says that there are medicinal herbs here, even rare ones of high grade, and he says that they had better move quickly to harvest them all. He inhales and says that the aroma is the real thing, too. A sudden snap makes his ears twitch. He straightens and mutters, "Huh." Green claws part the foliage. A chorus of red eyes rises from the dark. The foremost creature rasps that he should leave, human. Valor's gaze hardens. More figures spill from the brush, and a sibilant growl passes among them as they say that this land belongs to them. The scene jumps forward, working on harvesting the medicinal herbs while Valor lounges back on a sunbathing chair with cocktail in hand. Seeing one goblin's sloppy work, he shouts at them, asking if they can't even dig properly. He take out a wrapped sample and said that it should look like this, nice and clean. He had jabbed a finger toward clumsy workers and said that if they cut down carelessly like that, he would just shove them all back into their graves again. He had then bellowed with a red face. 1 hour earlier, as the goblin charge at him, Valor moves. He thrusts an arm, ether coiling like a tide around the first wave. He says that his skill should activate. His pupils contract to cold points as the sigil flares. He says that it is blood tear absorption. Crimson lines whip through the fray, draining all their blood. He exhales, just a quiet few, and glances at the tethered bodies. He says that his skill works on these guys too and that it is perfect. A blue notice confirms itself before his gaze, declaring that his skill proficiency has increased. He lifts his hand and says one word, that they should arise. Purple light pools in the hobgoblin's eyes. Rank upon rank steadies, now bound to his will. He watches them take formation and says that it is excellent, truly excellent. A hobgoblin in a tidy suit steps forward, bows, and says that he is grateful to him for taking in lowly beings such as them. Valor tilts his head and says that, anyway, the thing he wants to know is this. Besides thorny vines, what else lives in this canyon? The suited hobgoblin answers that, in this canyon, aside from hobgoblins, there are countless other monsters. He lists that there are werewolves, stone golems, giant spiders, and centaurs, and adds that there are many others as well. Valor nods toward the harvested clearing and says that he knows a lot and that he ride to make him his aid. The hobgoblin brightens and says that it is an honor to be of use. His ring suddenly shims. Valor touches the glowing ring at his finger and Cobalt's voice rings out asking if he forgot already about the use of the communication ring. Valor answers with an easy ah that he almost forgot. Cobalt asks, in passing, how is Grossglockner? Valor remarks that the weather is great, the breeze is cool, and the moonlight is beautiful. The voice replies that he sees. Cobalt's smooth tone then slips in live. He says that Polzin is bustling with preparations for the upcoming festival, and he adds that if Valor has time he should visit. Valor answers that, well, if he has time. Cobalt continues that, more importantly, Valpurgis has visited Ryder earlier. Valor perks up and asks how it went. Cobalt replies that it is just as he expected. They demanded a huge settlement and threatened to confiscate the goods that were to be traded with Roland. Only unequal terms were exchanged. Valor curses, saying that those bastards are starting to go off the rails, and Cobalt warns him that this is just the beginning. Valor tells him to inform Valpurgis that she should act like she's agreeing to their demands while stalling for as much time as possible. Cobalt agrees to do him this favor with a wicked smile while Valor rubs his head and promises to reward him handsomely when he returns. Cobalt brightens and says that he looks forward to it and says that he heard that there are gold mines in Grossglockner, causing Valor to become more irritated by this shamelessness. Cobalt then says that it seems noisy on his end and decides to end the call. Valor mutters in disbelief that he actually hung up. The goblin cries out, "My lord." He asks why the fuss. The goblin says that it is just that something has happened. Valor, already turning his head, says with a short huh. The ground shudders. Trees explode as a hulking ogre barrels out, and one of the demon beast handlers yelps that an ogre has appeared. Valor snaps an order that Kurik should fall back. The butler protests that, "But his lord, what about the herbs they have already picked?" pleading that he must, "No, please." The commander cuts him off and repeats that he said to fall back. Valor watches them tumble and thinks that they are all knocked out already, then hums, thoughtful and unhurried, as the moonlight glints on the arc of his blade. He studies the hulking ogre and thinks that at his current skill level with blood tier absorption, it will be tough. He notes as a blue notice pings that, as the levels of the monsters are very high, they are resisting the blood tier absorption skill. He concludes that the goblins have zero chance, and he adds that summoning undead will not help, because they would just end up like those goblins. He kicks lightly off the ground and thinks that, well, this worked out great. He rolls his shoulders and says that it is time to stretch a bit. Heat blooms across his palm. Golden light pours down his arm. He calls forth one of the Empire's 12 legendary swords, described aloud as the unbreakable treasure of House Valiant. He names it. He says that it is Rubalanya. A blue information panel confirms Rubalanya and outlines that it is the heirloom passed down by the Palouse Elector and the blade associated with the Lunar Shadow sword art. He eyes the tense green faces and says that they recognize this sword, do they not? He adds that this sword is the exclusive sword of the Lunar Shadow sword art, and he remarks that that fool Philip just locked it away in storage and chose some flashy sword instead. He lowers his stance and declares the technique. He says that it is Lunar Shadow sword art, zero form, dark moon. The moon-tinged arc scythes. Monsters shriek as the cut ripples through them. He steps onto the air as if it were a plate of light, rides the streak down, and buries the strike. He lands and watches the ogre topple, and he says, "Nailed it." It worked, adding that, according to the Lunar Shadow forms, that was precisely how it should go. The suited hobgoblin claps with shining eyes and says that it is incredible. He sniffs with mock pride and says that it was nothing. He adds that right now he can only sustain it for 30 seconds, but in his prime he held it for 10 full minutes, laughing as he says it. The goblin gawks and says that his lord's nose is even higher than his own. A hooded figure appears on the ridge and asks in a low, echoing voice whether that was his doing. The demand comes again, sharper. She tells him to tell her and asks whether that was his doing. He startles and thinks, when did she? Then flares with silver light and answers by moving, the lunar shadow art flashing across his guard. She descends fully revealed. A horned, crimson demoness whose eyes burn like coals. She says with chilling calm that she will snap his neck. He grits his teeth so hard that a cracking sound comes from his jaw as the crimson-horned demoness steadies herself before him. She declares that she will twist his neck. In a blur of red hair and taloned limbs she whips forward, scything the ground and sending him flying. He meets the rush, and a blue prompt materializes in front of him to report that he has taken heavy damage and his HP is down to 10%. He rayals in disbelief at her strength. Landing, she plants a clawed foot and growls. Shadows coil from her arms as she circles. He looks up through the drifting dust and, with a dry laugh, asks what a person of such power is doing here guarding this place. More importantly, he asks who exactly she is. With a jaunty point of his finger, he orders that she state her identity first. She answers, coldly, that his demand is improper, and then she identifies herself. She says that she is the master, Grossglockner. He blinks, baffled at the name. The night trembles. A towering image of the demonic dragon, Schwartz Teufel, looms behind her as he finally understood her identity. That is the demonic dragon of the Northern Range. He wonders aloud what is going on with this case. She says that he intruded, and her body vanishes and reappears with killing intent, so close that the air pops. She adds with a taunting curl of her lip that he is far too relaxed. She can feel energy pressing from everywhere at once. He wonders why that self-proclaimed wizard is talking like that. The goblin shuffles in front and declares that he will protect his master. Lifting her arm, calling him an arrogant inferior, she decrees that he dies. He throws up both hands and shouts that she should wait and listen to what he is saying. She raises her hand toward the moon. She fires back that it is pointless, then proceeds to attack. He hurls a desperate wedge of words. He says that if he dies, she will die too, demonic dragon. The declaration stops her and she demands what he just said. Keeping his voice level, he says that he has prophetic dreams, and in them he saw her. He clarifies, he saw her, the demonic dragon, die a miserable death. She narrows her eyes and repeats, as if tasting it, his death equal her death. He nods and says yes. If she does not believe him, she should check his memories. She darts, talons flashing, and then halts above him with a hissed appraisal that he is very suspicious, but, if he is lying, he will die. He agrees with a trembling voice. She morphs her hand into human ones and stands behind him. She declares that if he moves his head, he'll die, to which he agrees. She places a hand on his head and enters his mind. She rips through the air into a chamber of light and floating memory. She gets surprised by the amount of memories he has. He answers that it is nothing important, then points and says to look at this instead. A globe swells with images. She mutters that it is suspicious. He laughs, stiff at first. Then she looks at the sphere. Inside, the colossal body of Schwartz Teufel lays motionless. She stands shocked in disbelief seeing her motionless corpse. He then swiftly kicks her out of his mind before she notices his other memories. He thinks that that was close. If she saw more, she would have noticed his memories from other cycles. She steadies in front of him, eyes narrowing as she says that her corpse has been confirmed, and then asks a single question, saying that she wants to know who killed her. A bead of recognition flashes through her gaze. She jolts and, with a taut breath, says thanks, then declares that as a reward he will not die and will be freed from this mountain. He straightens with a grimace and says that he does not like that, and when her expression tilts in puzzlement. He raises a hand quickly and says that they should make a deal instead, then jabs a finger with sudden cheer and calls her Shubi, saying that her name is too long, way too long, and that from now on it will be just Shubi. She bristles, chops the air, and says in halting words that his speech is arrogant and asks if he is being serious, while a sullen, loading face seems to hang over the moment like a gag. He steps closer and says that she should listen to him, that Shubi can live. She bares fangs and screams that Shubi refuses and says that she is 3,000 years old. He insists with a sweeping gesture that this is how the MZ generation talks now and says to accept it. She snaps back that MZ is nonsense and just words and repeats that Shubi refuses. He throws his voice like a hammer and says to accept it, and her answering roar tears through the ravine. New quest has been updated, titled, The Dragon's Trust. A second notice glows and says that, due to the quest update, the game difficulty has slightly increased. Night woods hush under a deep blue sky. From the brush, a serpent lifts its head as a massive, blonde, horned man strides into the clearing with retinue in tow. He spreads his arms and proclaims in ringing cadence that he is the master of the abyss deeper than darkness and the king of chaos and disorder. He cocks a fist back and says that his name is none other than, then flares with starry bravado and declares that he is the great demon king Odgash. A lizard-faced attendant squeaks that they are almost there, calling him Lord. Another stammers, calling him Lord again. Odgash turns with veins standing in his temple and roars that he was in the middle of his entrance speech. The flustered subordinate bows and begs forgiveness, calling him Lord, and Odgash slumps onto a boulder with a disgusted sigh and says to forget it, that his mood is ruined. A cool voice drifts in as a silver-haired figure advances, and that voice says that those flustered ones are her subordinate and asks that he forgive them. Odgash's irritation melts into a grin. He tips his chin and says, "Oh ho, so it is you." Footfalls drum the path as a knight in sleek, dark armor approaches with spear and greatsword crossing her back. Silver hair streams like a banner from beneath her helm as she strides past the green moats. He watches with brightened eyes and, with a possessive, almost delighted murmur, says that she is his daughter, then names her as Callione. Callione advances with metal boots whispering over the leaf-strewn earth and lowers her head as she says that Callione greets her lord. He rests a massive hand on his hip and says that he promised once this campaign ends in success he would grant one of her dearest wishes. She straightens with composed gratitude and says yes, my lord, thank you. He laughs softly, the third eye on his brow gleaming, and says no, she is his beloved daughter and that something like this is only natural. He turns from her toward the gathered host and raises his voice as he says to hear him, his servants. Dark shapes mass between the trees while he says that they now march for Grossglockner, guarded by the demon dragon. He waves aside the green motes floating in the air and says that the beasts under its control are nothing special, but the demon dragon itself will not be easy. He plants a foot and draws power into his limbs as he says, "But fear not." He flexes with a grin and says again, "But fear not." Hulking followers ripple through the night as he says that all they must do is devour everything in sight, and then says to cruelly trample every living thing beneath their feet. He hefts his great weapon, muscles knotted beneath the torn shirt, and tilts the head of the weapon toward the high ridge as he says that, as for Schwartz Teufel, it belongs to him. This is Odgash, Demon King of Greed, ranking number 3. Wind lashes the canopy. Violet speedlines rake the sky. Green currents coil from the ground and lick around his arms. He sweeps one hand forward, eyes blazing, as he says now. A surge rolls through the ranks, horned brutes, plated monsters, and masked fiends break into a charge while the vortices spiral along their flanks. He advances at the fore, framed by writhing green flame, and his command billows over the host as he says to let them go forth, his vile children. Moonlight carves a crescent in the clouds while urgent cries ripple across the crags as voices shout that they should assemble, that they should assemble. Jagged ridgelines loom over a valley pricked with green motes, and he stands beneath the dark sky with the butler-shaped goblin at his back and says that a new night has dawned. He glances over the gathered green skins and says that although they were disturbed by strange beasts and a dragon with messed-up language patches, their mission is to collect as many valuable herbs as they can to bring back to Dresden. He throws up a fist and says, "Let's go," and a flustered echo from the ranks stammers that let's go. The troop breaks into a run through the glowing brush, and he calls after them that it is good and says that everyone should go to their positions, and voices answer that they are going to their positions. He settles under a popped open parasol with a relaxed exhale and says, "All right." The suited goblin steps in with a tray and says, "Here, a mandrake cocktail." He accepts the bulbous glass cradling a tiny, wailing mandrake and says, "Thank you, Kurlak," then tilts the rim toward the field and says to bring one for their filly too. The goblin dips his head and says, "Yes, master." He sips, watching the motes drift, and thinks that running into a dragon all of a sudden in a place like this was absurd, and he thinks that if he did not have memories from the previous run, he would be dead for sure. He knits his brow over the glass and thinks that this run is so weird. Images roll through his head. He thinks about Philip's betrayal, and he thinks about the dragon's design suddenly changing. A soft recollection rises and he thinks that, well, Walpurgis's bare face was pretty. The memory warms him and he laughs, letting a smug ho-ho-ho spill out. Then his eyes snap wide. A jolt of alarm flaring as he reels forward with a gasp that manifests as sharp, silent exclamation marks. He flings his hand through a circular glyph and says, "Open." Blue panes bloom and spiral as he sweeps his arm downward like a conductor summoning a swell, and he says, "Main scenario." The light sheets unfurl and whirlpool around him, reflecting across his gloves and cheekbones as the interface churns. His eyes narrow and a thought bites down that it is just as expected. He thinks that it was not only this time. The thought tightens into certainty and concludes that everything that happened so far. He sifts through the spinning panes of light, bracing a palm against the cliff as he thinks that not a single thing matches the previous run and then concludes that every single thing is completely new. A flashed portrait of Walpurgis gleams across a panel while he steadies himself and identifies himself in a measured cadence, saying that he, Valor de Valestedt, no, humanity's guardian, Han Wu, ranking number 1, remembers nearly every map in Grossglockner down to every stone. He frowns and adds in thought that it does not make sense that he is confused about the dragon's spawn locations, and he decides that something is off. He draws a breath and says that they should organize this. Images cascade as he recites the major beats. He names the battle for Harfame between the Steel Elector and Bahamut. He names Friedrich's betrayal, the Steel Elector's aid, and he names the crisis at the Grand Convent of Walpurgis. He concludes that the major main scenarios are all the same, but he notes that the smaller events within them are different. He studies the glass in his hand with miniature reflections of familiar faces and thinks that this is not just a new world. He wonders why it is so different and asks himself if he is missing something. A scream rips from the brush as someone yelps in pain. He calls out that he told them to be careful. A nervous voice stammers an apology, and he asks what happened. A goblin clutches a nicked hand and answers that it is nothing, saying that he just got a little hurt while gathering herbs. He warns evenly that they must be careful and says that if they scratch the roots they know what will happen. The goblin nods and says that he will keep that in mind. He glances over the scurrying crew and thinks that if he takes his eyes off them even for a moment, trouble happens. Two of the workers mutter to each other that they should be careful and agree with a subdued yeah. Then one asks the other if he is hurt badly. The wounded one flexes his fingers and answers that he is completely fine, calling the other brother. He watches and thinks that they look like brothers, and the thought tugs at another memory as he adds that, come to think of it, Charlotte also had a younger sister. He pauses with a small start and admits inwardly that he did not know that in the previous run. His eyes widen as a stray recollection snaps into focus, and he murmurs a baffled huh while the scene of Charlotte and her companion surges up from the back of his mind like a reprimand caught mid-breath. He watches a memory unspool across the mind's screen. A bustling table, fists thumping in cheer, plates piled high while he sits among them with the small blonde girl tucked at his side. A gleaming knight with a visor and rippling gold hair raises a hand in bright delight. The mandrake in his glass yawns and squeals from its foamy perch. Ants tick along the table leg near the stem of the drink as he thinks that he sees it now, that since his position has changed his perspective has changed too. In the previous world his build was steel elector and that he was the emperor of the empire and a hero who saved the world. He thinks that he always started with extraordinary abilities, that he had high stats. He looks up into the spotlight of his own recollection and thinks, but now, and then thinks that nothing stands out at all, that he is just a normal commoner character, and that all he has are memories from countless runs. He mocks himself and thinks with a snap that it is utterly pitiful. He steadies and then thinks that because of that he could see. He could see the expressions of the people around him and the tiny connections he had overlooked, and he could see Walpurgis's bare face. Petals and light drift in the mind's eye as he thinks that starting as a commoner finally made it visible. He studies the present scene and thinks that it is the same with this situation. He reflects that in the previous run he would have just repaid Walpurgis's debt and ended it, and he adds that he did not know the circumstances until now. His eyes harden as realization drops, and he says that he got it. His resolve spreads like starlight and he says again that he got it. He thinks toward the distant girl that her sudden proposal that day is a piece of the puzzle that can unlock the true ending that no one else found, and he thinks about that mysterious space she created. The mandrake jolts in his glass with a startled cry, foam wobbling at the rim, as his fingers tighten around the stem and the night hums with new intent. He thinks that, along with the suddenly unlocked commoner class, there was one more hint, and he lifts his hands as blue data trickles down his arms while he thinks the name Aquila. Ghostly blocks cascade like a puzzle before a bright doorway as he realizes and exclaims with a dark, pleased smile and asks if this is it, then repeats with rising certainty that this was all a tutorial. His butler goblin lurches in panic and shouts that, Master, the dragon rushed to them. Wind shears across the camp. The parasol flips. Snow-like spray whips the ground as the red-horned dragoness barrels in, pumping her fists, and she screams his name, then screams it again, and says that they arrived just as he said, those things. He straightens into the gale with a satisfied nod and says to thank Aquila for the expected outcome. She blinks and asks what, and he rubs the back of his neck with an easy grin and says that, well, it made him realize again that this game is truly amazing. She scrunches up, baffled, and asks what he is saying. He suddenly throws an arm toward the dark path and shouts that they should go, and she yelps his name in confusion while he laughs and says that he does not know either. He thinks that he has got it, that he understands, Aquila, how to fully enjoy this world. He sets off at a purposeful jog through the drifting green moats and thinks that, yeah, from now on he will chew, savor, and enjoy it properly. He thrusts a fist to the sky and shouts that a new strategy begins. He vaults forward and the two behind him, Demoness and Goblin, stare as he erupts into wild laughter, and his laughter peals again until even the Goblin's blank stare looks worried. The dragon mutters in a small, flat voice that his master has lost his mind, and the Goblin answers simply yes. Aja bursts from the vortex with a wild grin, axe aloft, declaring that they have reached the lair of the demon dragon, Schwartz Teufel. Behind him, his horde erupts, fists raised and eyes burning crimson, chanting his name until the gorge trembles. At his side, a silver-haired knight tilts her visor skyward and warns that something approaches. Aja asks if it is the demon dragon. A gale howls through the clearing as the air twists into a tunnel of force as Han Jae-woo falls down in front of them. Aja peers and mutters that it is only a human and a goblin, but the knight insists more are coming. Then the ground explodes. Bark ripped from trees as a vertical blast tears upward. Through the debris descends a crimson talon. The horned dragoness lowers her foot with deliberate menace and remarks that it is a strong morning, then flatly declares that this is her base. Smoke coils from her aura as she advances, repeating with growing venom that they should leave. Aja spreads his arms wide, greeting her as an old acquaintance and claiming he has come with a proposal. She replies without hesitation that it is rejected. He follows, insisting that she hear him out because the offer will tempt her. Farther back, Jae-woo observes, touching his ring as he notes that she has heard the signal to reduce magical output. He gazes at her and says that the offer will sound appealing, just like her appearance, then gestures for the operation to begin. The dragoness's pupils narrow. She confirms the command, wings snapping open as her aura sharpens to a lethal edge. She crooks her talons and signals that he should come. Aja misreads the gesture as invitation. Laughing, he says that she wants to meet him privately, calling her shy. A whirlpool opens beneath his boots, dragging him in as he allows himself to be swallowed, still grinning. Silence settles around Han Jae-woo. He exhales softly and mutters that he expected Odga's invasion but not this early. His gaze drifts to the crater where the dragoness first landed. Schwartz Teufel, ruler of this range and crucial to his broader goal. He debates ignoring the encounter but decides the demon dragon may prove useful. Looking into the unraveling winds, his expression hardens as he resolves his next move. Then he sweeps a hand across his chest with theatrical flair and laughs, saying that to stand before the continent's greatest beauty, Lady Kalyeon, is an honor. The knight lifts her visor, moonlight glinting across steel, and steps forward, silver hair spilling free, green eyes locked on him. He studies her and murmurs her name, Kalyeon. Behind her, soldiers gather, assassins, goblins, armored phantoms. Internally, he reminds himself that she can become either ally or enemy depending on his choices, noting that she surpasses even Bahamut in strength and that her title as Ice Queen is well earned. He concludes that recruiting her is vital to his strategy. Steeling himself, he decides Walpurgis can wait. He'll finish this first. He raises a hand in greeting, complimenting her beauty in person. A flash of steel cuts past his cheek. He turns to see a hooded elf step forward, eyes glowing red, weapon leveled. He says that he wishes to speak with her princess and asks the elf to step aside. The elf lunges, spitting that he is a demon. Before the blow lands, a goblin leaps between them, shouting that the elf should leave and calling her lower than earwax. Jae-woo blinks, surprised, as the trembling goblin declares that anyone wishing to harm his master must kill him first. Recognition softens Jae-woo's expression. He says that the goblin, Kurlak, has grown since the time he fled during the battle with the demon dragon. Kurlak stammers an apology. Han Jae-woo gestures toward his back and says that the goblin is braver than she is. A whip lashes the ground, sending up green sparks. The elf snarls and moves to strike again, but violet sigils bloom beneath her feet. Shadows rise and coil around her limbs, binding her mid-lunge. Black shapes flicker within the dark ribbons, tightening them until her weapon clatters to the ground. Without shifting his stance, Han Jae-woo calls for Hijax. From the gloom steps a caped figure, half hidden by violet light, idly twining the whip with one hand. The bindings cinch tighter. The goblin exhales in relief, glancing back for approval. Hijax yanks the whip. The bound elf thrashes as shadow bats burst across the ground. Violet energy slices through the air while a man in a dark coat steps charged and slashes the elf, declaring that he will cut down anyone who threatens his lord and will show no mercy. Kalyeon narrows her eyes, noting that he is a vampire. Han Jae-woo praises the observation and orders his forces to connect. At once, purple veins of power link them together as a line of familiars rises from the mist. Surveying his army, he remarks that their numbers are now even. He asks the Silver Knight how she feels about the arrangement. She studies it, then admits that now she understands, so that is the source of his confidence, and calls him human. Lightning crackles along her blade as she adds that they face the legion of Demon Lord Odga's army. Lowering her visor until it glows red, she commands her troops to destroy everything. Her vanguard roars in answer, swearing loyalty to Lady Kalyeon. Horned brutes shriek their charge, while Han Jae-woo's followers scream defiance. Steel meets storm. He surges forward, blades flashing, meeting a masked champion head-on. Kalyeon's necromantic blast erupts, but he cuts through it, landing on bent knees as sparks scatter around him. She steps forward, aura blazing, and admits that his strength impresses her, that he not only blocked her spell but her strike as well, concluding that he surpasses Bahamut. He straightens and says that her praise is an honor, but remarks that calling Aja a demon lord would make her father weep. He recites her title, the only daughter of the former rank 1 demon lord Kaimars, naming her as Lady Kalyeon Romnia Kaimars. She demands to know how much he knows. He laughs lightly and says that her ignorance amuses him. When she demands why he laughs, he answers that it is because she blindly follows her father's killer. The earth quakes. She whirls, eyes blazing, and growls, asking who killed whom. She remembers that he was the one she admired above all others. The warmth in his eyes had always steadied her, a quiet strength that lifted both her and the demon folk who followed him. Petals had drifted through that memory as she ran to him as a child, calling him father in her heart, feeling that he was her pride and her happiness itself. Then the memory burned away. She bites her lip until blood runs, the roar of fire drowning everything. Voices scream through the inferno, claiming that Kaimars was slain by Gorikaldum and Cultus. Smoke crushes in as her younger self is seized from behind, a heavy palm muffling her cry. She hears them declare to the mob that from this moment onward, the number 1 demon lord is them. The horde howls their madness to the flames. Later, rain drums on broken stone. She remembers standing beside him, Aja, who would later wear that hood, his voice low and cold beneath the storm. He says her name and tells her that he despises them as much as she does. He says that Lord Kaimars was not only his master but his friend, and that now is the time to endure. He swears that one day he will help her take revenge. She remembers every word. The present slams back in lightning and armor. She lifts her greatsword and snarls that he should be silent, demanding how he dares to insult her master. She challenges him to say who killed whom and vows to tear him apart. Han Ji-woo watches her trembling blade and says that she truly has it bad. He crouches, rolls a blue sphere across the rock, and tells her to look. The orb clinks to her boot. She stares down, breath caught, shock fracturing beneath her helm. Far off, a lonely ridge funnels the wind into a ring. Aja stands there laughing beneath the clouds, saying that it feels almost romantic, that he is touched to find himself alone with the demon dragon. The dragon beats its wings and answers in thunder that Aja himself killed Kaimars. She names Kaimars's daughter Kalyeon and spits why she is his lackey. Aja grins and says that the dragon must be mistaken. He claims that Kaimars was killed by Gorikaldum and Cultus. The dragon's eyes burn, and she replies that excuses are useless, for all of them were traitors. Aja rolls his shoulder, his axe humming, and admits that the dragon is right, that those fools could never have done it. He says that it was all his doing. When they learned he knew Kaimars's single weakness, they begged for his lead. Back on the shattered plain, Kalyeon stiffens. She says that it cannot be true. Her fingers lock white around her hilt as the sphere at her feet flickers with a pale figure trapped within. Sparks creep up her armor. The memory of rain, the false comfort, and Odga's confession twist together into a breath that cuts her from within. She sinks to her knees before the sphere and says that it cannot be true. She insists that Lord Odagshui was her father's most trusted ally, like a brother. Han Ji-woo measures her trembling and thinks that it is working. She is falling for it. Earlier before the battle, he calls to Shubi and says that he will explain the plan. He asks if she has a magic image projector on her wrist. Shubi nods. Han Ji-woo sweeps his arm toward the sky and orders her to use it to broadcast, to stream the truth of Kaimars's death, and to make Odagshui confess. The dragoness stammers that must be the plan. He confirms it and asks if she can manage. Back to the present, the night princess grips the ground in despair. Jae-woo glances toward the ridge and praises Shubi, saying that half the plan is already done and that he will handle the rest. Steam curls from the sphere. Kalyeon watches it, realizing that everything so far was an act, and thinks that after all this time, after being so close, the truth was waiting here. The air shimmers with the memory of her small hand reaching for her father's as they once walked together. Footsteps crunch through dust. Hijax hops in, reporting that cleanup is complete and calling him Lord. He tells her to hold position as ordered, and she chirps that she will. He exhales softly and says that she has served 50 years without even knowing who her real enemy was, calling her loyalty impressive. Silence lingers. Then he asks if she will keep standing there like that, asking if she does not crave revenge. He tells her that from now on he will teach her Kaimars's right of the true name, and that what she does with it will be her choice. Her lashes tremble as she says it has been long since she heard that name. She gazes at the constellations as golden lines trace the heavens and says that the rite draws on cosmic power, strong enough to wound even the archdemon. She explains that this was the spell that made her father the #1 demon lord, then fixes him with a sharp stare, demanding how an outsider could know such secrets. Han Jiwoo thinks that he learned everything from the strategy guide, that he knows not only the rite's immense power but also its fatal flaw. He decides to keep the full truth to himself and spins a more useful story. He says that he read the chronicles of the 7 demon wars, that it describes ways to resist the archdemon, and that among them was Kaimars's right of the true name. He says that it proved invaluable. She breathes out and says that she understands now, admitting that it explains his strange behavior. He flashes a grin and thinks that it worked. His all-purpose cheat, the chronicles of the 7 demon wars. But she hardens her gaze and warns that it will not help him, saying that Odagshui is immortal. She recalls the horned tyrant wreathed in green flame and says that even her father's right only crippled him. She asks how she could finish what Kaimars could not. Han Jiwoo steps closer and says that she is wrong. When she frowns in confusion, he tells her to listen carefully, calling her name. He taps his heel against the earth and says that her comrades have already been subdued by his vampire army. She glances around at their bound forms, violet veins crawling over their bodies. He tells her that no matter her strength, she cannot face this many alone. He raises a hand in truce and tells her to hear him out. He offers to become her new ally and asks whether she will follow him or die here. Her lip trembles. The sky of her childhood flickers behind her eyes. She remembers telling her father that she would one day become a great demon lord. He had laughed, lifted her high, and told her she must grow even stronger than him. When she asked if he believed she could, he had said of course, because she was Kaimars's daughter. The memory fades, and she whispers that maybe she truly can kill Odagshui. Han Jiwoo's retinue exchange glances. The Hijax asks if he made her cry. The vampire mutters that he went too far. Han Jiwoo sputters, asking what else he should have done. He cups his hands and shouts that she should not cry, reminding her that she is the operations captain and should act like it. The vampire beside him murmurs that in demon years she is still a child, and Hijax teases that he must enjoy making kids cry. Han Jiwoo shrieks as the goblin watches in bewilderment. On the distant ridge, Aja stands wreathed in green aura, steam rising from his shoulders as he faces the dragoness. He says that it is disappointing to see her fall so easily. The dragoness bares her teeth, snaps a gesture, and spits back with venom that he can go to hell. Violet and lime arcs collide with chained detonations as she dives through the shockwaves, horns flattened, tail snapping. While he hovers above with green wings spread and a third eye blazing. He bares his teeth and says that the demonic dragon is disappointing. She twists in the gale, pupils narrowing, and he says that he expected her to accept his offer. She draws a breath until her ribs rise and releases a tight gout of fire. Heat swells her outline. He plants himself in the blast with arms thrown wide as stone backs glow and sag. She lands through the updraft, lips smoking around her fangs, and breathes in ragged hisses while embered shards tumble at her feet. She steps, raises a hand, and with a raw, hoarse snap she says "fuck you." A green star flares at her fingertip. A cyclonic beam answers from below and rips her mid-flight, folding her wings while she screams against the pressure. When the glare collapses, he stands beneath boiling smoke, chest heaving, mouth shrouded in black aura, yellow lightning crawling over his shoulders. With half his face swallowed by darkness, he says that if that is the path she chooses, he will oblige. He crouches and launches. The takeoff caves the ground and throws a white ring of debris. He sides an arc that splits the ridge, then drops with both fists as twin wind blades howl. She smashes into torn earth, wings shuddering, and rasps through blood-webbed lips that she will beat him to death. She commits to full shift, spine lengthening, scales layering, a dragon's throat uncoiling, and drives straight at him with jaws gaping. He meets her bite with green radiance braced on his forearms. The clamp detonates a shock front that sheets the clouds. Far away, The ground convulses. The small goblin lurches and yelps to his master that an earthquake is hitting. Han Jiwoo grabs the goblin's sleeve and says that Kurlak should fall back because footing is treacherous. Hijax tilts her head with wicked gleam and says, laughing, that the goblin is cute and perhaps fit for a pet. The goblin squeaks refusal. The vampire reports to his lord that Lady Shubi's mana is surging. Han Jiwoo watches the sky turn red gold and says to Piffenheim that it appears so, adding that she is even breaking polymorph. The dragon's roar quakes the ridge while Han Jiwoo and his attendant stare through dust and ember. Han Jiwoo lowers a hand from his mouth and says that he was about to speak. The purple-eyed aide, calm despite the tremors, says that someone like Lady Shubi should be able to endure. Han Jiwoo's gaze hardens. He says that the attendant does not understand, and explains that in Gross Glockner the battles impose an enormous penalty on Shubi. His words landing as the night flashes with the blood-red outline of a horned leviathan. He swallows his next thought, turns, and calls for Kalyon. The white-haired knight steps forward with visor raised, emerald motes sliding over her armor. He says that her mission just became more critical and asks if she can carry it out. She answers that she can. Above the battlefield, Aja grins under a wreath of green lightning. The demonic dragon slams down, rings of force rippling outward, eyes burning like coals veined with venomous green. He rockets up to meet the surge head-on, weapon humming with a haloed edge as large as a gate, and he declares that it is now a contest of strength. Flame avalanches from her throat, a golden column colliding with his sweeping arc. The blast peels the clouds. He hurtles backward through light, axe tumbling, then steadies with a snarl as wildfire scribbles across the plain. He lands in a caldera of burning stones, steam hissing at his calves, and laughs low, shoulders shaking, saying that he cannot believe he is losing in raw power and that the desire to claim her only grows. She skins her lips from her fangs and calls him arrogant. She beats wings to scatter smoke, chest heaving in measured pulls, and says that she will deliver her reply. She surges higher, scales torch bright, the night bending around her, and says that even if the world collapses, nothing changes. Embers chase her like stars. Below, he narrows his eyes, lightning thickening along his arms as he sets his stance. He bares his teeth, lifts the haft, and says that she leaves him no choice but to change methods. Green cracks root from his feet across the ground as he rockets forward like a Viridian comet. The axe whips in a searing arc, shock lines laddering the sky. He does not chase the dragon. He carves the land itself, sprinting shattered ridges like a stare toward a black mouth in the mountain. Wind coils behind him, leaning spires groan. He skids, pivots, and drives the weapon like a ram. He barks that the target is that place as the cliff trembles. Stone collapses, exposing a cavern ringed with dim green motes. He launches again, faster, deeper, repeating that place as lightning stamps the threshold. The white-green concussion punches the mountain's heart. A tidal wave of dust and rock erupts while the dragon wheels above and the night boils with fire and thunder. Her jaw scrapes stone as the massif shudders. He plants himself at the cavern mouth, shoulders blazing with viridian arcs, and throws his head back into hysteric laughter. He opens a palm to the fire-lit ruin and says that the sight is pathetic for a demonic dragon. He tilts his chin, savoring the stagger in her wings, and says that he cannot believe she would lose so easily. She drops to one knee, scales shrinking to blood-red skin and torn bands, breath seething through her teeth. Pupils narrowing. He says, almost pleased, that he suspected a reason bound her to this place, though he admits he does not yet know what that place is. She wipes ash from her lip, lifts her head with a savage smile, and spits another fuck you. He rolls his neck, amused by her defiance, and says that she has guts even now. He lifts the axe as green lightning webs from half to sky and says that he will cleave her in two. Her eyes harden. She exhales once as a decision seals. She says that her role ends here. A white-blue line screams from the heavens, steel braided with sigil light, hammering across his guard and making him snarl and skid. Han Jiwoo steps through the shock with blade raised and declares that it is his turn now. Blood spatters the dark like rain. The red woman drags herself back, hands shaking, and breathes a wordless sound before letting a corner of her mouth lift at the swordsman's approach. She says that he is a brat. He plants himself beside her, eyes never leaving the horn-crowned foe as she says that he is late. He barks a laugh at her bruised scowl and says that her face is pathetic. She snorts, flicks sweat away, orders him to be silent, and warns without looking that he must never drop his guard. Aja straightens with aura roaring full and rakes the field with contempt, asking the leech like human what became of his Kalyon. Jaewoo smiles with lazy provocation and says that he refers to her. Han Jiwoo inhales, blade settling to his centerline as power gathers beneath his boots, and he calls for Kalyon. A golden star detonates above. Radiance pours through the broken clouds, and from its heart a voice trembles down that addresses a father. He lifts his face, third eye burning, while Kalyon floats within a spinning magic circle, eyes bright and cold. She fixes him with her gaze and asks whether he has anything to say to her. Below her, the Aja stretches his arms wide, laughing with manic pride. He calls out that his daughter, Kalyon, has at last mastered the true name, urging her to use that newfound power to obliterate their foe. But he stops mid-command. Jaewoo cuts in, demanding to know what she is doing. Han Jiwoo steps forward, cloak snapping in the charged wind. He raises his voice to the hovering knight, asking if she intends to simply let the monster keep talking. He scowls and adds that she will be kicked out on her first day if she hesitates. The blonde titan's third eye narrows, his gaze burning across the battlefield. Jaewoo points at him and growls that this man is her father's killer. Aja toward Jiwoo, his confusion sharpening into threat, demanding what he just said. He throws his head back, laughter rolling like thunder, and says that such talk is absurd. He beats his chest and declares that Kaimar's had been his drinking companion, that killing him would have been unthinkable. He recalls his earlier conversation with the dragon. Images twist together, his masked grin from the past, a voice dripping venom admitting that everyone knew he was the traitor, that he had orchestrated it all. Green lightning rips through the haze, crackling around Odga's frame. His tone drops to a rough growl as he realizes he has been toyed with. He spreads his hands, the ground shaking beneath his feet, and says that she was only playing him from the start. Han Jiwoo snaps to the dragoness, shouting for Shubi to restrain him before he goes berserk. She bares her fangs, replying that he should not rush her. Violet chains erupt from her hands, spiraling around the giant's limbs and locking him in a lattice of binding light. He braces against them, muscles bulging, as the ground cracks beneath his weight. Sigils flare into a massive circle, sealing them within a glowing arena of light. Aja tilts his head back, laughing in feverish delight, saying that this is fun and urging them to bring it on. Kalyon descends through a shower of golden motes, sword-shouldered, aura bleeding into scarlet. She drives forward in a blur, her voice breaking into a roar as she calls for Odga's death. Above her, a vast golden seal ignites. She slams her blade down, and the heavens answer. An enormous sunbeam strikes the ring, consuming the bound colossus. The world becomes white fire, sound collapsing into a single burning note. When the light fades, Odga's blackened silhouette stands frozen within the collapsing beam, shockwaves still tearing through the valley. Dust spirals outward. Kalyon staggers, planting her sword in the cracked ground to steady herself. Her breath shudders through the quiet. She lifts her head, voice trembling as she says that she has finally done it. For a moment, the light gentles, shaping the outline of a familiar figure reaching toward her. She steps forward as if toward an embrace and whispers her father's name. But the vision scatters into ash. Her jaw tightens. She scrubs away her tears with a steel-smeared arm and forces her breath even. The sky rumbles again. Emerald fissures crawl through the clouds as pressure builds to a crushing peak, shaking stone and bone alike. The columns shiver and the sigil ring hums with a rising shriek. Aja pulls himself together inside the ruined arena, a giant of green fire and shadow. His face lifts toward her, neon eyes gleaming, and he says that her strike was excellent. His grin widens, fangs glinting. Kalyon tenses, gripping her weapon. Han Jiwoo raises a hand, dropping a violet lattice over the arena and announcing that the battle is already decided. The giant snarls, calling him an insect, aura flaring like sparks from a furnace. He surges to charge, then halts, eyes flashing at a fresh wound opening across his flank. He growls that it is not regenerating. A cold voice cuts through the din reciting, Guardian of Humanity. Pro tip, number 8. Han Jiwoo darts forward, cape cracking through the smoke. He slides low across shattered rock, grabs the sliced horn of Aja, and drives it full force downward. He laughs between breaths as he explains that the way to bind an immortal is to use its own body against it. A severed black horn, covered in pale runes. spears through the Colossus's chest, pinning him to the earth. The shockwave rings the mountains, shaking the stars. Blue system pains flare to life before them. You have defeated the third lord, Aja. Dropped items. Scharfrichter, Odga's corpse, Odga's horn, Odga's cloak. The proficiency of the S-rank skill, Summon Undead, has increased. Summoned vampires promoted to Daywalkers. New skill acquired. Endless Vitality, S-rank. New skill acquired. Black Lightning, S-rank. New skill acquired. Opera Nova, S-rank. New skill acquired. Ghostly Steps, SS rank. A final Gilded Pane declares, you have obtained the title, Hero. Rose-colored light flows from Shubi's palm toward Kalyon, calming the scorched air. She lowers her hand and says that it is over. Shubi breathes hard, glaring at the crater, and mutters through clenched teeth that survival itself feels like a mistake. She points at the ruin and snarls that all their comrades are dead anyway. Kalyon looks aside, eyes glistening, and murmurs that perhaps that is true. By sunset, as the party was departing, Han Jae-woo turns back, asking if she is coming. Her face brightens into a small smile as she says that she has finally found a place where she belongs. Night fades into a quiet room scented with herbs. A small girl sits trembling, a clay cup clutched in her hands. She complains that the medicine is too bitter. Her father crouches beside her and tells her to drink it all, reminding her that Lord Valor and his allies risked everything to retrieve it. She peeks up and asks if he will grant her wish once she finishes. He smiles and promises that he will. Outside the door, Jae-woo asks if everything he requested is arranged. The merchant covers his mouth, lowering his voice, glancing toward the sick room, and says that they should speak elsewhere so his daughter will not overhear. Sunlight spills through a window onto a heavy door. Jae-woo waits, arms folded and impatient, asking if the task is complete. The merchant reports that the lighter guild is resisting. The fur-collared guildmaster rubs his temples, muttering that those debtors are making trouble likely because of their ties to the Elector of Saxony. He recalls a blonde patron waving lazily, reminding the guildmaster that his group are valuable customers. Laughing, he says that the guilds have always been friends. Tone cuts in sharply as he tells the merchant to simply arrange a meeting with the Elector of Saxony. The guildmaster startles, then agrees. Valor folds his hands behind his back and remarks that the lighters must be terrified of losing their Saxony connection once the debt is transferred. When the guildmaster confirms this, Valor lets out a thin laugh, calling it troublesome. He begins pacing, thoughts whirring. He reasons that the lighters' recklessness now makes sense. He thinks that if it had been only the Emperor and the home of heaven, the balance might have held, but with Saxony involved, the scales tip. He imagines circling beasts and a restless tiger, and concludes that even Walpurgis must be sleepless under such tension. He taps his temple and urges himself to think, reminding himself that he had once been a ranker in this game and should be able to devise a plan. He turns back with an idea forming while the guildmaster proposes offering alternative compensation instead of a debt transfer. When the guildmaster looks surprised, Valor steps closer, voice dropping, and asks if the guildmaster is skilled at making threats. A crimson banner cracks in the wind above a stone keep. Inside the Grand Hall, a sharp-faced lord leaps from his throne, demanding to know why Saxony now threatens their annihilation. A sweating steward bows and explains that Saxony promised a 2-year extension if they acknowledge the debt transfer. The lord slams a jug to pieces at his feet, snarling that they should have refused such terms, then orders them to go to the capital at once. He points toward the doors and roars that they must cling to the emperor himself if necessary and resolve the matter by any means before returning. A blue notice materializes, stating that the proficiency of his S-rank skill Summon Undead has increased and that his vampires have advanced to Daywalkers. He tilts his head and says that Daywalkers, then reads the follow-up note defining a Daywalker as a vampire who has overcome sunlight. He lifts his hand, gathers power, and says that Piffenheim should arise. Bats coil into form and the purple-haired vampire kneels from the swarm, saying that he greets his lord. From the steps, he says that Piffenheim and the others have become true Daywalkers and that, because of this, he is assigning a special mission. Piffenheim bows lower and says that it is an honor. Han Jiwoo, Valor, produces a sealed letter and says that it contains his will and must be delivered to a man named Reeb Saltz. Piffenheim startles and says that he understands the gravity. Valor waves the envelope toward him and says that it must not be torn. Piffenheim accepts and says that the command will be carried out. Valor nods and says that he may go. Piffenheim withdraws, saying that yes, my lord. On the street, the fur-collared guildmaster hurries up and says that Valor is leaving already. He adds that he has prepared what was requested. He gestures to a lacquered carriage behind a black horse and says that it is a masterwork used only by select nobles, acquired through an acquaintance at a client's business. Valor runs a hand along the trim and says that it is slick. The guildmaster points to heavy pouches inside and says that payment for herbs and travel funds are included. Valor says that it feels substantial. The guildmaster studies him and asks what such a luxury is for. Valor smirks and says that he intends to bash the lighter scoundrels with it. The merchant flinches at a memory of a rampaging blonde noble, then stammers that he is not curious about how Valor plans to teach them. A pink-haired girl peeks from behind her father. Valor softens and says that she is out and about and that, while healthier, she must still be careful. She gathers nerve and says that she has something for him. He asks what it is. She rises on her toes and presses a quick kiss to his cheek as petals drift and onlookers gasp. She clasps her hands and says that it is a present, then hurries to her father. As they depart, she looks up and says that she once mentioned a wish. He swallows and says that he remembers. She admits, voice shaking with excitement, that she wants to become Lord Valor's bride. Her father freezes in shock. Memory floods her father's mind. A child with white blossoms and a kitten once declaring that she would be her daddy's bride when grown. The recollection shatters under a present tense howl from the street that says no, and the world reels with it. The lacquered carriage rattles along a forest road under blue sky. Inside, Callione leans back, grinning, and says that the girl is a true warrior. She says that such boldness to claim a mate is impressive. He lounges opposite, one leg up hugging the gold. She asks, amused, if their lord likes money that much. He blinks and says what? He waves it off with laughter and says that they do not understand, that the world runs on money. He points at the row of attendants and says that they should stop copying his habits. A telesiel buzzes. A bright familiar voice bursts through, laughing, and says that Lord Valor survived Grossglockner. He answers dryly and says that he is very much alive, addressing Lord Kubert. Crows pattern the sky as the report continues with a jaunty tone, saying that he is as chic as ever. Valor cuts in and says that is enough, then asks whether the lighters have departed. The courier's voice turns brisk and says that the crows discovered it just now and that this is why he is calling. Valor nods and says that the speed is good, then asks for details. Images flicker across the link, cobbles, porters shouting to hurry, harried replies. The voice concludes that events match Valor's prediction and adds, amused, that what he did hit them earlier than expected. Valor smirks at his reflection and says that it was only a small trick. The courier adds one more surprise and prompts him to guess. Valor asks what it is. A perfumed silhouette of a woman in roses spins across the channel. The voice says that Yorlin, the only Lord of Roses, is in the capital. Valor's eyes glint and he says oh. He taps the window frame and says that it is interesting, then asks the courier to spread a rumor in the capital. The courier laughs knowingly and says that Valor is as meticulous as ever. Valor raises a hand, grimacing at the flattery, and says that this is between them and that he will reward him handsomely, so the flattery can stop. The courier howls with delight and says that there is no need for embarrassment. Valor clicks the sigil off and says that he will trust him and end the call. He lets his hand drop and mutters that the phrase between you and me is creepy. Callione studies him and asks if this Kubert is the one from Pilsen, adding that his connections are wider than expected. Jaewoo pats his chest and says that they are broad indeed. He turns his gaze to Callione Elf and adds, edged, that there is another matter. She stiffens with twitching ears and asks why he is staring at her like that. The maid beside her flails and shrieks. Valor laces his fingers, mischief curling his mouth, and says that dear Callione should make a stage debut. The view lifts to Vienna's spires and avenues, over ale and gossip, townsmen trade rumors. One says that Kaimars's daughter arrives today. Another rubs his chin and says that Kaimars is long dead. Their imaginations flash with a horned monster and a child crying for her father. The first insists that Demon Lord Aja killed Kaimars and kidnapped his daughter. The second asks why. The first says that Aja coveted Kaimars's technique and perhaps more. The second prompts for more. The first leans in and says that the daughter is breathtakingly beautiful. The second sputters that this cannot be the only reason. The carriage rolls into the capital as townsfolk point and shout that the visitors have arrived. From the coach, Kalyon asks shyly if this spectacle is necessary. She looks at the crowd as he answers with a bright, instructive smile that it is, saying that her presence is a strategic weapon. She repeats the phrase in confusion and says that she thought weapons were great swords and axes. He laughs and scolds that she should not speak so while dressed beautifully, then waves to the onlookers and says that she should imitate him. He poses in the doorway and coaches her. He says that one hand should go under her face. He says that the other should rest on her gathered knees. He lowers his voice and says that she should wear her most bashful expression. He demonstrates with a sparkling grin and says that he is so very shy. She stiffens, the old commander in her bristling, and says that he expects an action commander who led an army to do that. He claps and says that she should begin and perform with energy for the crowd. She tries to preserve dignity and says that an action commander still has pride. He sighs that this is getting dull. He narrows his eyes and asks if she wants to be fired. He taps the seat and says that she can get out if she is unwilling. She swallows, then, ears red, repeats his cues to herself. Hand under face, hand on knee, shy expression, and prepares. The crowd presses close, expectant. She strikes the pose with burning cheeks. Petals seem to bloom as she murmurs the line about being shy. The square freezes for a beat, then erupts. She peeks at Valor and asks, uncertain, if she did it correctly. The roar swells. She squeaks into a breathless cry and, still crimson, asks again if it is right. Across the city, in a chandeliered hall, a horned woman in a rose dress steps to a dais and addresses her staff. She says that a very important guest is coming. She admits that it might not be her place to say and then confesses that to her this person is more important than the emperor or any demon lord. She begs their best efforts. She orders the chefs to prepare the most delicious meal they have ever made and the maids to make the venue more beautiful than her rose palace. An aide reports that the guests will arrive shortly. She echoes already, breath-catching, then turns back and declares that everyone should do their utmost so today becomes the greatest day of that person's life. For her Lord Kaimar's. Under a storm of golden roses, time rewinds. Roland, the demon king of Rose. Her beauty and voice, both can captivate anyone who beholds her, yet warns that her real power lies elsewhere. Her tongue is her blade, her diplomacy as deadly as any weapon. The scene shifts to a shining city, petals and papers spinning in the wind around her parasol. The narration explains that through brilliance and control, she transforms Roserant into a flawless nation, so efficient and dazzling that its people call her the Bride of Roserant. But, the voice adds, they do not know the truth behind her crown. Dusk falls. Roland walks through a golden field beside a tall white-haired man, Lord Kaimar's, and a small silver-haired girl. Facing him, her expression is tender and pleading. She says that he is the only one to whom she can open her heart. Hand pressed to her chest, she insists that her feelings will never change and begs him to believe her. Little Kalyon cuts in calling him, Dad. Kaimar's carries the little girl, Kalyon, in his arms. From Roland's viewpoint, she watches them draw near. The child looks at her father curiously and asks who the beautiful lady is. Kaimar's replies lightly that she is a co-worker. The girl stares at Roland's crimson figure and says that she's the prettiest person she's ever seen. Later, the sun sinks into amber light. Kalyon runs to Roland, clutching a small parcel wrapped with care. She proudly announces that she and Uncle Odgash made it together, urging Roland to take it. When she opens it, it's a bundle of cookies, some imperfect, others neatly shaped. The girl beams and says that because Roland is so pretty, she deserves the best one. Roland's expression wavers, surprise, melancholy, and something unspoken. She murmurs softly that she sees. Looking at the gift, then at the father and daughter before her, she says it feels as though she no longer belongs anywhere. Yet she kneels, lifts her gaze to the child, and addresses her as Princess Kalyon. She asks that, if she ever builds a castle someday, she WZNTS Kalyon to name it. Kalyon points at herself with puzzlement. Roland answers that she would be honored if Kalyon named it. Kalyon smiles and says that since Roland is so bright and lovely, the castle should be called the Rose Palace, leaving Roland speechless. Her face softens into a gentle, motherly smile as petals whirl through the glowing sky. The memory fades. In the present, Kalyon stands in a marble hall beneath soaring arches, now grown into a poised princess in a white and blue gown. With steady composure, Roland announces that since Lord Kaimar's has passed, she comes now as his sole blood relative, Lady Kalyon. Before her, Roland kneels, head lifted, calm and unreadable. Time slides forward to a banquet. Callione gazes at the grand feast while Roland admits regretfully that if they were at Rose Palace, she could have offered something more extravagant. Roland observes her with an amused smile while the table gleams with gold dishes, jeweled meats, and shining vegetables. Flustered, Callione waves her hands and insists it's already more than enough. Roland thanks Lord Valor for bringing the princess back when everyone believed her dead, calling it an extraordinary feat. Valor modestly replies that it was nothing. Roland, half smiling, remarks that Count Niederbayern has spoken much about him, how he overcomes obstacles through the strangest means. She adds slyly that she also heard rumors of a rather special connection between him and a certain lady. Valor's face flushes scarlet. He hurriedly insists that the topic be dropped. Roland leans back with a sly grin and says she enjoys love stories. Valor sweats, muttering an awkward agreement while the atmosphere turns comically dark, both of them exaggerated like mischievous caricatures. In the background, Callione and the maids stand frozen with uneasy smiles until Callione blurts that she'll excuse herself. When the laughter fades, Valor straightens and says that he also enjoys business. The chandelier glints as Valor collects himself and finally states his true purpose. He comes bearing a message for Lady Roland from Elector Steele Philip. Roland's gaze sharpens instantly. She thinks that her suspicion was right, he lives. She asks calmly if she may meet him. Valor raises his cup and says that the Elector's condition prevents it, explaining that he comes as Philip's proxy. Inwardly, he notes wryly that the man is, in fact, dead. Roland tilts her head, intrigued, then invites him to continue. Valor relays that Philip, unable to act publicly, has granted Valor full authority as his proxy and instructs Roland to aid him in reclaiming the pulse. Valor decides that, even if this is a lie, convincing Roland is all that matters. Behind his courteous smile, his mind runs dark. Margaretta's recent curse proves that Pezamet is supported by the Grand Lord himself. That means ordinary means won't work. He cannot kill those protected by such power, and so he needs Roland's alliance. Out loud, he calmly concludes Philip's message, while pouring more tea. Roland stirs her cup, watching the rising steam, and says she has one condition. Valor leans forward with interest. She reminds him that Rosarent suffers under an imperial blockade. If he truly has the Elector's authority, then his words must reach the Emperor. Valor's grin widens. He snaps his fingers and declares that she need not worry, the board is already set. The scene jumps to the imperial capital, Wien. A noble kneels before Emperor Franz IV, pleading for help. Franz, lounging in his red cloak and crown, apologizes with mock regret. He says he initially refused but changed his mind after hearing their contribution. Bags of gold spill open beside the throne, light flashing on the coins. The noble stiffens, realizing he's been betrayed. In his mind echoes the order he'd once received, to fix the crisis by any means necessary. Now, seeing bribery win where loyalty failed, rage tightens his fists. A herald's voice breaks the tension, announcing Lord Valor's arrival. The Emperor muses aloud that it's about time. The doors swing open, and Valor strides in, poised and immaculate. He bows and introduces himself with flawless courtesy. The Emperor waves lazily toward the kneeling noble and says Valor should ignore the man. He's just decoration. Valor smiles politely, then requests a private audience. The Emperor sighs but waves his hand in agreement. Guards seize the kneeling man, dragging him away as he screams that House Ritter has always served faithfully. His pleas echo through the hall, unanswered. As he's pulled away, he catches Valor's cold smile, small, knowing, merciless. Realization dawns on his face a moment before he's gone. Valor's smirk fades into calm as the door shuts behind them. Lightning flashes over Odgash's fortress. Inside, Margareta rages before her gathered followers. Watching the projection of her father's forces and the human envoys, she realizes he's acted without her and screams that he's a fool. Her subordinates whisper nervously that someone powerful must be backing him. Margareta's fury burns until her veins bulge. She curses Callione's name as the cause of everything. Just then, a trembling slime servant rushes in, stammering that the Emperor has issued an economic blockade against them. Margareta freezes, stunned, then slowly turns toward the messenger. The hall falls silent. The slime asks if she's all right. For a heartbeat, she says nothing. Then the scene erupts into exaggerated color as she bursts out, shouting what that's supposed to mean. Her followers stare helplessly until one mutters that they're completely doomed. After the previous petitioner was dragged away and silence returned to the hall, the red carpet lay clean before the throne. The Emperor peered down the length of it and asked offhandedly if they were done. Valor, alone at its center, answered brightly that yes, now it was clean. Straightening his vest, Valor gestured toward the windows and said that the sight of the prosperous capital filled him with awe for his majesty's achievements, admitting he felt unworthy to stand there. The emperor curtly told him that was enough flattery, inwardly scoffing that the man was a slick little weasel. The emperor's thoughts darkened. In a short time, Valor had used Kymars's daughter, Kalyon, to calm anti-demon unrest and win allies. Clever, yes, but still a trembling mouse before a lion. He pictured himself as that lion, watching the mouse squirm. Valor, reading the thought in his eyes, decided the emperor already knew everything and resolved to talk his way through it. The emperor told him to speak. Valor stepped forward, bowed on one knee, and humbly requested that the economic blockade on Rosarin be shifted to Odgash's dominion. From above, the emperor asked what benefit that would bring him. Valor replied that his majesty would gain a friendship treaty with the Rose Demon King. The emperor laughed loudly, calling the idea absurd. Did Valor really think that ancient spider would ever obey him? Valor answered calmly that she would. The emperor paused, surprised, and asked if Roland herself had agreed to pay tribute. Valor nodded confidently. A bead of sweat rolled down the emperor's temple as he demanded proof. Smiling, Valor produced the signed document. He then argued that Odgash was the continent's most hated villain, and that sanctioning him would make the emperor's name shine worldwide. He described cheering crowds and imperial glory until the emperor, staring at the paper, murmured that it was interesting, especially the signature of Princess Kalyon. Still, he slammed the armrest, declaring that politics was not driven by emotion. Valor smiled tightly, thinking bitterly that the emperor hadn't said that when he punished Rosarin for refusing tribute. Out loud, he continued smoothly, explaining that Odgash's army was preparing to strike again and that the empire's people were afraid. It was time, he said, for decisive action. The emperor studied him in silence before remarking that Valor truly had a silver tongue, enough to pay off 10 million florins. Valor bowed, saying his majesty was too kind. In his vision, a faint message appeared. Mephistopheles' acting activated, deception enhanced. Eyes gleaming, he declared that he only wished to serve his sovereign with loyalty. Before he could finish his speech, the emperor slammed his fist down, roaring that Valor was an insolent fool to think sweet words could sway him. He shouted for guards to seize him. Valor cried out in shock as armored hands gripped his arms, dragged away. He thought frantically that something was wrong. Then the world shifted. Music and laughter filled the same palace, now dressed for a feast. The emperor laughed heartily beside Valor, saying he had never met a man with such honeyed words. When Valor addressed him as, "Your Majesty," the emperor interrupted, insisting he call him uncle. Valor forced a smile and obeyed. The emperor, beaming, called him his adorable nephew and promised him anything, wealth, power, whatever he desired. Those words echoed later in a shadowed alley. A hooded man clenched his fists, seething that that position should have been his. Others gathered around, whispering darkly. One suggested kidnapping Valpurgis. Another protested, calling it madness. The first spat that failure meant ruin, while a third voice mocked them all, and then suddenly agreed, grinning that they should do it now. Back in the palace, Valor lay sprawled on his bed, groaning that he was dying. Kalyon, arms crossed, remarked that this was what he got for drinking everything. Valor laughed, saying this was simply social life. He then muttered for her to go away and let him rest. A ringing tone cut the air. His communication sigil blinked, and his miniature image appeared groggily answering a call. Lord Cobalt shouts that disaster has struck. Valor winced, scolding him not to yell, but the man insisted it was serious. Valpurgis has been kidnapped and behind her, a man in a vest led a line of hooded conspirators, their eyes glowing red. Meanwhile at Odgash's castle. Inside, Margareta stormed through the chaos, shouting that hesitation was over. She vowed to avenge her father, even if it meant devouring the demonic dragon herself. Margareta Vontash, daughter of Odgash, the caption named her. In the castle hall, she ordered every surviving warrior gathered and driven to train without rest, pointing at a trembling dog like demon. Another subordinate murmured that the dragon wasn't alone. A loud crash answered him. Margareta grinned, declaring that they would march to Gross Glockner. A sweating slime creature begged her to be cautious, warning that the emperor had blockaded them and that Valpurgis had resurrected Saint Margareta of the Sisterhood. Images flickered of the saint, radiant and smiling, and of Roland, hiding her laughter behind a red fan. The slime started to speak but screamed as Margareta's heel crushed him flat. She glared down coldly, calling him a weakling who dared block her path. Nearby, a metal-masked demon only stared, silent. As darkness closed in, one resigned voice muttered, "Damn it, we're screwed." Valpurgis, still bound in her ornate armor, lets out a strained groan through clenched teeth. Her voice trembles with fury as she demands that they kill her and demands to know why they are still keeping her alive. A noble from House Ritter sits nearby, legs crossed and arms folded, sighing as if her words are an annoyance. He says that he has already explained that his goal is only to persuade the emperor. Standing beside him, another man grins confidently and claims that their fortress is unbreakable, surrounded by a lake and protected by iron walls. Even if Count Byron's army attacked, he insists, it would take them ages to breach the defenses. Laughing lightly, he says that everything will turn out fine. Valpurgis lifts her head sharply and snaps that he is a fool if he thinks enemies will politely knock before attacking. Her single visible eye burns crimson beneath the visor. The Ritter noble snarls, telling her to shut her mouth, and kicks her with brutal force. Looking down at her, he mocks that she's awfully loud for a prisoner. His tone drips with venom as he leans close and remarks that she must have been close to that bastard Valor. At the mention of Valor, his face contorts with rage. Inwardly, he seethes at the memory of his humiliation at Valor's hands, a wound that still burns. He vows that he will make Valpurgis suffer the same disgrace, forcing her to pay in Valor's stead. Struggling against her chains, she spits that he's pathetic. He laughs, saying that perhaps he is, but taunts that she can do nothing about it now. Stretching his arms wide, he shouts that she's alone, completely abandoned. He taps the front of her helmet mockingly, repeating her name as if savoring the sound. Outside, a guard's shout pierces the night. Someone yells that intruders have been spotted. The Ritter noble stiffens in disbelief, his expression twisting from arrogance to panic. Under the pale moon, dark figures line the fortress walls, cloaked in shadow. A crimson cape flutters among them. On a rooftop, Hexix grins and reports that every unit except Piffenheim, who is on a special mission, is in position and ready to strike. A nervous subordinate asks if he should join. Hexix, cloak whipping in the wind, replies cheerfully that since they are friends, of course he will. A scream splits the night as the assault begins. Valor's tone hardens as he commands silence, his gaze cutting through the chaos. He declares that their mission is simple, to rescue Valpurgis and annihilate House Ritter. Staring at the fortress, he thinks grimly that he would have let them be had they stayed quiet. Power surges around him as he draws his weapon, announcing that the hunt begins. The fortress erupts in chaos, steel against steel, flames sparking, cries echoing down the corridors. Valor moves like a shadow, cutting through soldiers with ruthless precision. Hexix swings her weapon with savage delight beside him. Valor tells her to handle this side. She grins and answers that she understands, addressing him as her lord. The goblin Karorik sprints after them in a neat suit, pleading to come along. Hexix grabs him by the collar, insisting he stay with her, and he yells in protest. Valor calls over his shoulder that Karorik should help Hexix clean up this side. Karorik flails and screams that he refuses. Valor clenches his teeth, thinking he has no time for cowards. Every step drives him faster, he must reach Valpurgis before it's too late. Inside the fortress, through a projection, Valor's figure glows faintly. The Ritter noble sees him and freezes. Recognition strikes instantly. That hated face, the one that once disgraced him, returns like a nightmare. His features twist into madness. He shouts for a sword. When one is handed to him, he runs a thumb along the blade and mutters that imagining Valor's screams makes him tremble with anticipation. His grin stretches into something monstrous as he vows silently that this time, he'll be the one laughing when Valor dies. He orders his men to follow. Meanwhile, Valpurgis strains against her restraints. Realization dawns. Valor has come. He always comes for her. Memories flash of battles fought side by side, of his constant presence at her back. Yet now, chained and powerless, she feels fury at her own weakness. A thunderous crack shatters the pillar. Stone splits, and fragments scatter. The Ritter Lord exhales heavily, muttering that everything had been going so smoothly and that he should have gone to the capital himself. His gaze snaps toward her as the chains break. His eyes widen when she steps free, the bindings falling away. He shouts that she actually broke the reinforced barrier, then scoffs that it makes no difference, she's unarmed. He lunges with a roar, shouting that she should die. She pivots and drives a kick that shatters the sword, sending him stumbling. He slashes wildly, demanding how she dares defy him. She meets his attack head-on, countering with a crushing blow that hurls him across the room. Standing tall, she says coldly that she will no longer rely on others. That she will end this herself, addressing him as Lord Ritter. He scrambles back, begging her to wait, insisting that the kidnapping wasn't his idea, that it was his son's foolishness. She answers sharply that it makes no difference. Another devastating strike tears the chamber apart. He collapses, trembling, muttering that she's a monster. She tilts her head, saying that calling a lady a monster is quite rude. The ground rumbles beneath them. Ritter laughs suddenly and declares that the real monster has awakened. He says that if monsters exist, they should fight each other. He bellows for Igor. Elsewhere, Valor rushes through the corridors, demanding to know if he's headed the right way. Over the link, Cobalt confirms that he's tracking through familiars and adds that something, or someone, called Igor has appeared near Valpurgis. Valor repeats the name, puzzled. Cobalt explains that Igor is a weapon under Ritter's command, a human creation infamous for the massacre at Ritter Castle. A beast in human form. Valor mutters that such a thing wasn't in the original storyline. Cobalt asks what he means, but Valor brushes it off, thanks him, and cuts the link. The raging noble charges Valor with a roar. Valor flicks his hand. Dark power blooms under the attacker. The man screams a slur, asking how Valor dares humiliate him like that, and then cries out in confusion, as the shadow creature slams his fist on his head. Valor glances down at the crumpled form and asks what this is, then mutters in irritation that wasted so much time, and sprints on. In the Lord's chamber, Ritter laughs manically as a massive shadow stirs in the dust. The creature rises. A towering abomination of steel and flesh. Valpurgis recognizes the hulking form and realizes this was the monster that ambushed and captured her. She steadies herself, reminding that as a warrior of the Valpurga convent, she must not falter. The giant's aura explodes outward, shaking the chamber. Ritter grins wickedly and says that she just mentioned a word that Igor hates more than anything. The name Valpurga Convent. He repeats it gleefully. Valpurgis gasps, demanding to know why that enrages him. Across the fortress, the ground quakes as Igor bellows with fury. Ritter laughs manically, pointing toward her, shouting that the monster should kill the monster. As Igor's roar fills the fortress, Valpurgis braces herself for the coming clash. Steam rises from a meager meal. A lone patty atop wilted greens, with small bowls of eggs and sauce on the side. Margareta slams her fist against the table, demanding to know what kind of pathetic spread this is. The slime servant beside her murmurs nervously that their finances are dire and that they must save Lord Vontash. Outraged, she snaps that they are rich. The slime hushes her, whispering that they even sold the castle because of the blockade. She blinks in disbelief, then waves dismissively and asks if the army is ready. The slime stammers that yes, after using part of the sale money, they completed the soldiers' medical treatments. She smacks him sharply, saying she meant training, not treatment, and orders him to make them strong, not healthy. He protests weakly that treatment was necessary. She reclines with irritation, saying that meat heals everything and that her pampered soldiers are useless because her pig-headed father spoiled them. A tiny armored attendant mutters that things were better when Lord Odgash was around. She points to the meal and orders them to eat and summon everyone. The small one nods obediently, while the slime droops, thinking grimly that they are doomed. Far away, before a cathedral's rose window, two nuns watch a trembling boy clutching a metal ball to his chest. One sister asks if he truly wishes to join the Valpurga convent. He nods, bowing deeply. The taller nun crosses her arms, explaining that their faith is proven through weight, not words. She remarks that he hardly looks strong enough to lift 100, let alone 500 pounds for the 3 sacred exercises, bench press, squat, and deadlift. His devotion, she admits, is admirable, but he lacks the physical strength their convent demands. She tells him that though he may visit anytime, he cannot join. And this is why Igor came to hate them. Steel roars elsewhere. Inside a ruined hall, Valpurgis tries to block with her armored forearm against the bald giant's fist, the impact shaking the fortress. Explosions ripple outward as the floor splits as she is sent flying. Ritter, watching, throws back his head in cruel laughter, shouting that no one can stop Igor when he loses control, that he could not recognize his own father when in this state. The giant's massive fist sends him crashing through the window. Meanwhile, Valpurgis slides across marble and steadies herself amid debris. She mutters that she doesn't know what triggered his rage but feels the sorrow in every blow. Bracing her legs, she channels golden energy through her fist, hurling the monster backward. Violet power seethes across his body as he rises again, roaring through clenched teeth. Through the thunder of battle, fragments of memory surface, the voice of the nun echoing in Igor's mind. She reminds him that faith is proven by weight, that he was too weak for their path, and that though his heart was pure, his body failed him. The boy appears in memory, performing push-ups, lifting boulders, and years later, smiling proudly at the reflection of his hardened form, until suddenly all his hair fell down and he became bald, truly a huge tragedy. In the present, Igor charges with unstoppable force. Valpurgis dives beneath his swing, drives a knee upward, and exhales a sharp, focused breath before striking again. Rain begins to seep through the shattered ceiling. She steadies herself and says that when his fists no longer waver, she will face him again. Across the fractured floor, they prepare for another clash as debris falls like rain. Outside, she presses a hand to her helmet, murmuring that perhaps she fought too hard. The fortress is crumbling. In the distant corridors, Valor sprints forward, cloak snapping in the storm of dust. The walls tremble around him, and he mutters in alarm, wondering if it's an earthquake. A section of the arch collapses. He shouts for Rublania and cuts through the falling stone with a flash of light, carving a tunnel ahead. Dust billows over him as he curses under his breath. The path ahead is blocked, and a voice in his mind warns that time is running out. A familiar telepathic tone calls him, Lord Valor, and asks if he's unharmed. He answers yes and demands to know Valpurgis's status. The voice replies that she's alive but the fortress is collapsing, adding that it has sent its familiar to assist and urges him to rescue her quickly. He glances up to see a bat-like demon fluttering above and thanks it, saying its timing is perfect. Back in the shattered hall, Valpurgis stands over the unconscious giant, looking toward the corridor. She senses Valor drawing near and thinks that she must meet him. There's something she could never say before. The memory tightens her chest. Above her, the ceiling groans and breaks. A flash of white arcs through the falling rubble. Valor's blade slicing the debris apart. She turns, visor lifting. Calling his name, she sees him land through the dust, smiling as he speaks hers in return. Behind her, the half-conscious giant blinks. Valor asks who he is. She says curtly that his name is Igor and that they need to get out immediately. The bat flutters between them, agreeing urgently that they must hurry. Valor nods, saying he understands, and gestures toward the exit. They run through halls bathed in colored light from shattered stained glass. Valpurgis watches him flick his gauntlet, noticing the neat sigil on his wrist glowing with the words, Magic Glove Storage Active. She thinks it amusing that the hulking brute somehow fits inside that spell. The bat urges them onward, saying it's not far. Valor responds with a strained breath that he knows. As they move, Valpurgis says she has something important to tell him. He answers that he has much to say too, but insists they talk after escaping. She refuses, saying that it cannot wait. He sighs and tells her to go on. She explains that the name, Valpurgis, is a false one, and that her real name is different. He acknowledges her faintly, urging her to focus on leaving, but she raises her voice above the storm and shouts that her true name is Chartier. Valor glances back, smiling despite the chaos, saying that it's a beautiful. His words cut off as the hall rumbles. He finishes softly, calling it a beautiful name, but his eyes widen when a deafening crack splits the ceiling. She shouts for him to look out as another wave of rubble crashes down. An explosion rips through the chamber. Dust engulfs everything as the familiar shrieks that Valor is dead. From the crater below, his voice rises, hoarse but alive, saying that he's fine. He stares at the destroyed ceiling and mutters that it's completely collapsed. Chartier flies to the edge, calling down anxiously. He says he's unharmed and asks about her. She shouts back that she's fine. Above, Hexix drifts lazily into view, laughing softly about what a romantic scene it is. Valor calls her name and says that her timing is perfect, asking for help. He reaches up to Chartier, telling her to take his hand. She nods, reaching toward him. Hexix interjects, counting down that the fortress will collapse in 5 seconds. Both Valor and Chartier scream as the walls groan and the ground splits. He gasps that they need to move. She calls his name, reaching again through the storm of dust. Their hands touch, fingers grazing, just as she cries her true name once more. The fortress finally gives way, towers folding inward, walls swallowed by smoke and flame. Moments later, the three burst free above the collapsing stronghold, borne aloft by Hexax's magic. Sunlight pierces through the haze. A shimmering panel of light forms before them, declaring that Valor has learned Valpurgis's true name, Chartier. Another luminous pane follows, stating that her affection toward him has greatly increased. She smiles, her face flushed and bright, as tiny glowing hearts swirl around her, carried by the wind. Hexix beats her many bat-like wings through the blizzard of dust, carrying him by the wrist while a string of familiars tows her cape like pennants. Far below, the fortress buckles and exhales rubble. She looks up mid-flight and says that he barely made it, adding that a heartbeat later they would all have been crushed. He steadies himself in the updraft and says that he is simply glad he arrived in time. Hexix tilts her cap as the bells on her ribbon chime and says that her lord has a call. He glances aside and says that it is Cobalt. He raises the link with a greeting, but a furious voice tears through the channel, howling his name. He startles and says that the voice belongs to Margareta. The abbess on the line sees that those deranged Ritter vermin dared kidnap Valpurgis. She steadies her breath and says that, in truth, she was already running their way because she intended to find those bastards and beat the life out of them. He repeats in a low murmur that she intends to catch them and beat them, and she confirms with relish that the plan is precisely that. On the ground, soldiers crane their necks as she hovers before the shattered keep and lifts both arms. She proclaims for all to witness the secret technique of the Valpurga convent's abbess, the great Margareta. Light detonates. She roars the technique's name, supernova, and a sun-white pillar drops, hurling soil, bodies, and stone. Standing in the smoking crater with gold radiance running from her hair, she laughs that she is unbeatable. Watching from the sky, he gulps and thinks that he should not act cheeky toward her for a while. Night fractures into a new morning at the administrative heart of Niederbayern, in Landshut, where Valpurgis's villa mirrors a blue pool. Chartier, Margareta and Valor gather beneath the portico. Wheels clatter to a halt as armored men in deep blue cloaks dismount into crisp ranks. Margareta whispers that the guest has arrived. She that it is yet another theatrical entrance, while Valor stares at the wall of metal and stammers that these men wear heavier plate than the Emperor's elite. Footsteps strike the carpet as a tall blonde noble advances under banners. A caption names him Maximilian, Prince-Elector of Bayern. Valpurgis breaks from the line and runs into his arms, hair flying, asking if he has been well, calling him uncle. He draws back, searching her face, and asks if she is hurt anywhere and whether she understands how worried he has been. She flusters and says that she is fine, adding that she is safe thanks to Valor. His gaze slides past her toward the rescuer. His voice cools with acid as he says that Valor, vapor, or whatever, should simply disappear as the name implies. She stiffens at the bite in his tone, a bead of sweat slipping down his cheek, and Valor wonders inwardly about the sudden change. Margareta snaps that without Valor they would have been in real trouble. She says that Valpurgis stands here only because Valor arrived so quickly. The prince is already swaggering toward Valor, grumbling that had he not come later than this infernal brat, then, he stops himself, muttering that the boy should consider himself lucky. Valor offers a thin laugh and thinks that with all those men in tow, the prince would not have reached the fortress any faster. The prince suddenly throws his arms wide and shouts that his dear Valpurgis should sleep with her uncle tonight. She yelps and tries to wriggle free while Margareta says with alarm that he should calm down. Watching this, Valor thinks that Valpurgis must have had a hard childhood. Ceremony reasserts itself as trumpets level their tone. The prince proclaims that Valorstad Valor, for great merit, shall be granted knighthood, and commands him to serve Valpurgis with unwavering loyalty. He bows and says that he accepts with thanks. Later, as he walks the cathedral's aisles, narration runs in his head. He says that the Prince-Elector granted him knighthood today, and that even though the man looked sour about it, he could not deny the rescue. He says that Ritter's debt arrived neatly converted into a deed of land. He says that a few faces tightened at the award. In a neighboring hall, Valor projects the Emperor in front of those who protested. The Emperor then slams a hand down and demands to know whether those punks dare show disrespect to his brother. Valor notes that the Emperor says life is about money and power and that the Emperor taught them a pointed lesson. He smirks inwardly and calls them cute little brats. When he finally staggers into his room, he says that the day has been endless. He drops onto the bed and says that the Ritter who harassed Valpurgis is gone, that he is now a formal knight, and that he even holds a small territory. His gaze lingers on the memory of a certain blonde, and he thinks that although he watched her through countless runs, everything about her now feels new. His door bangs open and a blue-haired princess, Callione, storms in. He blurts her name as she points and, with trembling lips, demands how he could do this, saying that he told her to follow, then vanished, and asking what she was supposed to do. He raises his hands and says that she should calm herself. Roland glides in and addresses Princess Callione, advising that the princess stand down for now, compose herself, and challenge again later. The princess blinks and asks if compose means more strength training. She says that under Odgash she already trained enough. Roland waves a hand and says that she means a different kind of composure. Moments later, the princess flushes pink and relaxes. A beat later, the princess declares that she will stand down and orders Valor to answer when summoned, while Roland trills a delighted laugh and takes her leave. Valor rubs his temple, wondering what was just whispered. He says that Roland saved him. A calm voice remarks that vanishing from the capital without a word would startle anyone. He yawns and says that he intends to sleep. Then a gentle call of his name drifts from the balcony. He turns to see Chartier framed by roses, gloved hands gathered at her waist, eyes luminous. She stands within the petals and tilts her head, asking that he walk with her. He startles, warmth flickering across his face, and says that they should go at once. They step beneath a crescent moon. He brushes dust from his sleeves and says that the day truly was chaos. She keeps pace and says that it certainly was. Night insects trill. He steals a glance and says that Valpurgis was an alias. She nods and says that, strictly speaking, it is her baptismal name, adding that the festival for the goddess Valpurga is called Valpurgis. He says that this is why it sounded akin to the goddess of compassion. Inwardly, he recites the pantheon of this world. He says that Rugen is the god of justice. He says that Valpurga is the goddess of compassion. He says that Orbiana rules nature and life. He says that Marga governs light, and he says that Aquila is the sovereign of time and space. Because she serves Valpurga's convent, he gathers nerve and says that Chartier is a lovely name. She colors and says that she is surprised but pleased. He thinks that the name suits her, and she leans closer to say that he may use it when it is just the two of them. He pumps a fist at his side and says that he understands, using it only in private. He grins inwardly, thinking that at this pace there might even be, he stammers in his thoughts, an actual kiss. A pillar of crimson crashes down before them with a thunderclap. He wheels and shields Chartier, jaw tight. The red-horned dragoness drops into the smoking crater, eyes blazing, and says that Valor should come along with her now, while he could only grumble at how shitty life is. Meanwhile, Margareta Vontash's voice rolls across the grounds as she cries that everyone must assemble. Demons and monsters spill from shadowed hedges into the clearing. She plants hands on her hips and glares at the ragtag horde. She asks why all of them are in their underwear. A slime bobs and says that they have no money. She argues that they sold the castle. He adds that payments are delayed by the economic blockade. She slices the air with a finger and says enough, fix it. Then she squares her shoulders and jerks a thumb over her shoulder, saying anyway, and lifts her arm high. She declares that their destination now is the lair of the demonic dragon, Gross Glockner. She grins wide, fangs bright, raises a clenched fist, and says that they should fear nothing and devour anything that moves, then screams that the demonic dragon is hers.